If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Share it with your friends and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Every like and subscribe helps the channel grow. My name is David Harrington, and I've been a park ranger at the Adirondack Mountains for 3 years now. Most days, I love my job. Today started just like any other June evening in 1959. Beautiful, peaceful, and exactly why I chose this life. After coming home from Korea, the sun was setting as I began my evening patrol, turning the sky a deep gold that filtered through the tall white pines. I love that time of day when everything gets quiet and still. The gentle sound of Lake Placid's water lapping at the shore mixed with the chirping of chickadees in the trees. It was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. For the first time since I got back from the war, I felt something close to peace. My ranger uniform felt right on my shoulders, like a new kind of armor against the regular world that never made sense to me after what I saw overseas. I took a deep breath of the pine-scented air when something caught my attention. A faint smell underneath. The freshness, something rotting. It wasn't strong, but it was definitely there. I checked my boots, thinking I might have stepped in something, but they were clean. That's odd, I muttered to myself, looking around. The sunset should have lasted longer, but darkness seemed to fall faster than normal. The spaces between the trees grew black, like the forest itself was eating up the light. I'd never seen darkness move in like that before. I reached for my radio to check in with the station. Harrington to base, just passing marker 12 on the East Trail. My voice crackled through more static than usual. No response came back. Harrington to base, do you copy? More static. Then nothing at all. I frowned. The radio had been working fine just an hour ago, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky to interfere. With the signal, that's when I saw them. A family of deer crossing the path ahead of me. Nothing unusual about deer in these woods, but something wasn't right. They weren't moving calmly. They were running, their eyes wide with what I could only describe as fear, real fear. The kind I recognized from human faces back in Korea. A cold gust of wind suddenly hit me, making me zip up my jacket. The temperature was dropping fast, too fast for a summer evening. I watched in disbelief as frost began forming on the pine. Needles around me, frost. In late June, I knew these trails like the back of my hand, but something felt wrong. The big rock that should have been on my left seemed to be on my right. The bent tree I used as a landmark wasn't where it should be. It was like someone had shifted everything just a few feet from where my memory said they should be. Pulling out my compass, I checked my bearings. The needle spun wildly, around and around, never settling on north. I tapped it, shook it, but it just kept spinning. What the hell? I whispered. The forest seemed to breathe around me, not just the normal sounds of wind in the trees, but something deeper, something alive, something watching. I'd survived 3 years in Korea by trusting my gut. And right now, my gut was screaming at me to get out of these woods, but the trail ahead had somehow become unfamiliar, and behind me, the darkness was growing deeper by the second. I was trapped. Sometimes I wonder if the forest knows what I've seen, what I've done. I came to these mountains to forget Korea, but the memories follow me like shadows. 3 years ago, I found my entire platoon dead in a small village. I still see their faces when I close my eyes, still hear the silence. That shouldn't have been there. I touched the scar that runs from my temple to my jaw. The man who did this to my platoon didn't go down easy, neither did I. The locals in town call me the Quiet Ranger. They're not wrong. After what happened overseas, I found it hard to talk to people. Animals and trees don't ask questions. They don't expect you to smile when you're broken inside. My hand drifted to the silver flask in my pocket. It was still full, just like it had been yesterday and the day before. Every day I think about emptying it, about letting the whiskey wash away the nightmares. But every day I stop myself. Drinking won't bring back the dead. There's only one person in town who doesn't look at me like I'm some kind of ghost. Annie, from the diner. She leaves me alone when I need it, talks when I don't, and somehow knows the difference. Yesterday she said, "David, you look at these mountains like they're home." Maybe she's right. When people go missing in these woods, they call me. My boss says I'm the best tracker he's ever seen. He doesn't know it's because I learned to track people who didn't want to be found in Korea. Skills like that come at a price. Pulled my grandfather's Blackfoot knife from its sheath and turned it over in my hand. The bone handle felt warm, even in the growing cold around me. Grandpa always said forests hold secrets, things most people won't ever see or understand. When I was a kid, I thought he was just telling stories. Now I'm not so sure. Last night, I woke up screaming again. Same nightmare as always. The dead. From my platoon, with faces stretched and wrong, coming closer and closer until I can't breathe. The neighbor's dog started howling when I screamed. I should probably apologize to Mrs. Fletcher again. My old commanding officer used to call me unkillable after I survived the bullet that gave me this scar, the grenade that killed Johnson but left me with just a few scars on my back, and the river that should have drowned me but didn't. Harrington's got 9 lives, he'd say. I hope he was right, because something in my gut tells me I might need a few of those lives tonight. The darkness between the trees seemed to watch me as I stood frozen on the path. Every instinct, the same ones that kept me alive in Korea, was telling me to run, to get out of these woods, now. But which way was out? The paths I knew so well suddenly seemed foreign, like I'd stepped into a different forest altogether. That's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong here, a child's laugh echoing between the trees. According to the camping logs I checked this morning, there were no children registered in the park tonight. So who, or what, was laughing? The child's laughter came again, farther away this time, deeper in the woods. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness as I turned toward the sound. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the vast silence. No answer came back, just the echo of my own words. I took a careful step forward, scanning the ground with my light. That's when I saw it, a hiking boot lying on its side in the middle of the path. It looked brand new, like someone had just bought it from the store in town. But when I picked it up, I noticed something strange. 5 neat holes punched through the thick leather, like something had stabbed through it. I set the boot back down exactly where I found it. Something wasn't right. Then I noticed the silence. Not just quiet. The woods are never truly quiet, but complete silence. No crickets, no rustling leaves, no distant owl calls, nothing. The silence was so complete it made my ears hurt, like being underwater. "This isn't normal," I whispered, mostly to hear any sound at all. My flashlight beam swept across the trees around me. What I saw made my blood run cold. Long, deep claw marks ran up the trunk of a nearby pine. Not bear marks. These were different. They started at my chest height and went up, nearly 15 feet high. No animal I knew could reach that high. I kept walking, hoping to find the main trail again. Instead, I found something that made my stomach drop. A ranger's clipboard lying face down in the dirt. I recognized it immediately. It belonged to Tom Miller, a fellow ranger who went missing 3 weeks ago. The search teams had found nothing. I picked it up with shaking hands. Tom's neat handwriting filled the top part of the page. June 1st, 1959. Routine patrol of North Section. All campsites clear. Strange marks on trees near Old Mill Creek. Possibly bear, but pattern is unusual. Temperature dropping. Radio malfunctioning. I keep hearing what sounds like. The writing stopped there, ending in a jagged line that dragged across the page, like his hand had been pulled away mid-sentence. I tucked the clipboard into my bag. Tom's family deserved to have something of his back, at least. As I walked, the ground felt strange under my boots, too soft, like something had dug tunnels underneath. With each step, I could feel the earth giving slightly. Something wet hit. My hat. Then again on my shoulder. I looked up to see a thick, clear goo dripping from the branches above me. It looked like tree sap, but when a drop landed on my metal badge, it sizzled like acid. I quickly wiped it off, noticing it didn't burn my gloves or clothes, just the metal. 20 feet ahead, I saw something that stopped me in my tracks. A perfect circle of dead plants and grass, about 20 feet across. Everything inside the circle was brown and withered, while everything outside was normal. It was like someone had drawn a line and said, "Nothing lives here anymore." I raised my flashlight to look beyond the circle, and dozens of eyes reflected the light back at me from the bushes. They were too high off the ground to be raccoons or foxes, too many to be deer, and they didn't move or blink as my light hit them. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Whatever was watching me wasn't natural. Then the fog came. It rolled in, fast and thick, but wrong somehow. It moved against the wind, curling around trees like it had a mind of its own. Within seconds, it had cut off the path behind me. I was being herded. The child's laughter came again, this time from 3 different directions at once. I stood frozen, my hand moving to my grandfather's knife. An old memory surfaced. Him telling me about forest spirits, things that could trick your eyes and ears, things that could make you lost forever if you weren't careful. When the forest tries to confuse you, he'd said, don't trust what you see, trust what you feel. Right now I felt danger, pure, deadly danger, and it was getting closer by the second. I saw it first as a shadow among shadows, something tall, impossibly tall, and thin like a tree that could move. Its head nearly touched the lower branches of the pines, and what looked like deer antlers spread wide above it. The air around me got so cold that my breath came out in thick white clouds. June in the Adirondacks shouldn't be this cold. This was winter cold, dangerous cold. David, help me, I'm hurt. My heart nearly stopped. That was Annie's voice, coming from somewhere in the trees to my right. Annie, I called out, turning toward her voice. David, please, I'm over here. Her voice came again, but from my left this time, then behind me. David, hurry! 3 directions at once. Impossible. I swung my flashlight toward where I'd seen the tall shadow, hitting nothing but empty space between trees. But as I turned back, I caught something in the corner of my eye, a flash of movement, something sliding between trees faster than anything should be able to move. My hand reached for my service revolver. The weight of it was comforting. Even though some part of me knew bullets might not help against whatever this was, the shadow appeared again, closer now. I could see it better, a body too skinny to be alive, skin pulled tight over a frame that wasn't quite human. Its fingers were long, ending in points that reminded me of the holes in that hiking boot. I fired my gun. The sound exploded through the silent forest, and I knew I hit my target, but the bullets passed right through like shooting at smoke. A thing let out a howl that made my bones ache with cold. It wasn't angry. It was laughing. I ran. I didn't care which direction anymore, just away from that thing. But the trees themselves seemed to move, branches bending down to block my path, roots rising up to trip me. The ground was solid under my feet, but I saw no footprints where the creature had been. It left no marks, while somehow changing everything. Around it, ice formed on my eyelashes, making it hard to see. The air got so cold it hurt to breathe, like inhaling tiny glass shards. This cold wasn't natural. It followed the creature like a shadow. I stumbled into a small clearing and froze in horror. On the ground was a man in hiking clothes. Must have been the owner of that boot. The creature was bent over him, but it wasn't eating him like an animal would. It seemed to be drinking him in somehow. With each moment, the hiker's body shriveled while the creature became more solid. I must have made a sound because suddenly it turned toward me. Its face. I'll never forget that face. Stretched tight with hunger, its mouth too wide, filled with teeth like ice shards, eyes sunken and glowing with a pale blue light, and then its voice was in my head. Not one voice, many. Men, women, children, old and young, all talking at once. Your skin will be warm. We've been so cold for so long. I recognized one of the voices. Tom Miller, the missing ranger. The creature rose to its full height, easily 10 feet tall, and looked down at me. "Harrington," it said, using just Tom's voice now. "Run if you want. It's more fun that way." I didn't need to be told twice. I turned and ran, hearing that awful, chilling laughter behind me. With each passing second, I could feel it getting closer. The trees opened up ahead of me, and I saw a structure in the distance, the old fire lookout tower. It had been abandoned years ago when the new one was built, but right now it looked like my only hope. As I ran toward it, I heard what sounded like footsteps in the snow behind me. But there was no snow, not in June, just the frost that formed. "Wherever that thing walked, we wore Tom for days," the voices said in my head. "We'll wear you for weeks." The old wooden steps of the tower creaked under my weight as I took them 2 at a time, heart hammering in my chest. I slammed the trap, door shut behind me, knowing it wouldn't hold that thing for long, but I'd found shelter at least for a moment. Time to think. Time to figure out what the hell I was dealing with. Grandpa's stories about forest spirits came flooding back, especially one that always scared me as a kid, the tale of the Wendigo, a spirit of cold and hunger that was once human before it ate human flesh and turned into something else. Just a story, I told myself, trying to stop my hands from shaking. Just a damn story. But deep down, I knew better. Whatever was outside, hunting me through the dark woods of the Adirondacks, was very, very real, and it was coming for me next. Inside the old fire tower, my breathing came in short gasps. The single room at the top was dusty and abandoned. A wooden table, a broken chair, some old maps on the wall. But it was better than being out there with that thing. I tried the old radio sitting on the desk, but it was long dead. No help there. The temperature inside the tower began to drop rapidly. Frost crawled up the windows like ivy growing in fast motion. The thing, the Wendigo, was coming. A thud from below made me jump. Something was climbing the stairs, but what came through the trapdoor wasn't the monster. It was a man in a Korean war uniform, his face half blown away, just like Sanders had looked when we found him in that village. "You left us there, Harrington," he said, his voice wet and wrong. I backed up against the wall. "You're not real," I whispered. He smiled with half a face. Real enough. More figures climbed through the trap door, all faces from my past, all dead men from my platoon. Their uniforms were dirty with Korean soil. They smelled of gunpowder and rot. "Not real," I repeated, squeezing my eyes shut. When I opened them, they were gone. But the cold remained. Ice formed on every surface now, the metal railings groaning as frost expanded them. My fingers were going numb, and I could see my skin turning blue around the nails. The Wendigo was trying to freeze me to death before it even reached me. Desperate, I stumbled around the small room, looking for anything that might help. My boot caught on the edge of an old rug, sending me sprawling. As I pushed myself up, I noticed something carved into the wooden floor where the rug had been, strange symbols in a circle. I recognized them from my grandfather's teachings, Algonquin protection symbols. But the circle was broken. One symbol faded away completely. Outside, the Wendigo screamed, a sound like ice cracking and wind howling. It knew what I'd found. My numb fingers fumbled for my grandfather's knife. I remembered him saying, "The old magic needs belief, and sometimes blood, to work." With shaking hands, I traced the missing symbol with the tip of his knife, carving it deep into the wood. When I finished, I dragged the blade across my palm and pressed my bleeding hand to the symbol. "Keep evil out," I whispered, the way Grandpa had taught me. "Keep evil bound." A flash of blue light burst from the completed circle, and the tower shook with the Wendigo's scream of rage. The temperature rose just enough that I could feel my fingers again. The barrier wouldn't last long, but it gave me time to think. The flask in my pocket suddenly felt very heavy. I pulled it out, studying it in the dim light. I'd found it on a trail 3 weeks ago, right around when Tom went missing, and kept meaning to turn it in to Lost and Found. But something about it kept me from doing that. Now I noticed details I'd missed before. Initials scratched into the bottom, TM Tom Miller, and something else. Tiny tooth marks around the rim, like someone had desperately chewed on it. The pieces clicked together in my mind. Tom must have gotten lost, run out of food. In desperation, he might have... No, I couldn't think about that. But the old story said that's how a Wendigo is born. When a person commits the ultimate taboo of eating human flesh, they become the spirit of hunger itself. The tower shuddered again. Ice crept across the protection circle, trying to break it. I didn't have much time. I set up the old kerosene lantern I found, my hands still shaking with cold. As I lit it, the Wendigo's screams grew more frantic. Fire. It feared fire. The trap. The ductor burst open, and this time it was the creature itself, all bone and stretched skin, antlers scraping the ceiling, eyes glowing with hunger and hate. In my panic, I knocked over the lantern. Fire spread quickly across the dry wooden floor, igniting old papers and the rug. The Wendigo shrieked and backed away from the flames, but we were both trapped now. Fire below us, darkness and a deadly fall all around. The heat of the flames melted, the ice from the protection circle, breaking whatever magic had been holding the creature at bay. It lunged at me, those long, sharp fingers reaching for my throat. I rolled away, feeling the floor beneath me starting to crack from the heat. The fire was consuming the tower. Soon, the whole thing would collapse. The silver flask caught the firelight, giving me an idea. "You want me?" I shouted at the creature. "You want to wear my skin? Well, come and get it." I waved Tom's flask, drawing its attention. The Wendigo's eyes fixed on it, and I saw recognition there. Part of Tom was still in that thing, still connected to his possessions. I tossed the flask into the heart of the fire. The Wendigo howled and dove after it, plunging its bony hands into the flames. As soon as it touched the melting silver, something incredible happened. The creature began to get pulled toward the flask, like it was being sucked into it. "Return to your prison," I said, remembering more of Grandpa's words. "Bound by silver, bound by fire." The tower groaned and tilted as supports burned through. I had seconds to live if I stayed. With the Wendigo distracted, still being pulled into the flask, I ran to the window and looked down. A snowdrift had formed below, impossible in June, but there it was. The Wendigo's winter had given me a way out. I crashed through the window just as the tower collapsed inward. The fall knocked the wind out of me, but the snow cushioned the worst of it. I rolled away as burning timbers fell all around me. Behind me, the tower became a bonfire, the screams of the Wendigo fading as the flames consumed everything. I don't remember much of the walk back to civilization. They found me the next morning, wandering along the highway, covered in burns and frostbite side by side on my skin. The doctors couldn't explain how I had both heat and cold injuries at the same time. The psychiatrist they brought in nodded and wrote traumatic stress in his notebook when I told him about the creature in the woods. No one believed me. Why would they? But they did find the remains of the fire tower, burned to ash, and in the center of it all, a melted lump of silver that had once been a flask. My hair turned white in patches where the Wendigo had touched me. The doctors called. It's shock, but I know better. I still work as a ranger in the Adirondacks. Someone has to keep watch, because when the next winter came, 3 more rangers went missing in the same section of forest. And sometimes on cold nights when the wind blows, just right, I can hear voices calling my name from deep in the whispering pines. My name is Josephine Winters. but everyone calls me Joe. I've been a park ranger at Shawnee National Forest for 12 years now, and I know these woods better than I know most people. That's how I like it. The afternoon sun filtered through the oak trees as I hiked along Deadfall Creek. This was my favorite patrol route. Quiet, peaceful, and usually all mine. I stopped to watch a family of otters playing in the creek. Their happy splashing made me smile. It's moments like these that remind me why I chose this life. I looked up at the limestone cliffs glowing golden in the afternoon light. Those ancient carvings on the rocks have been here for hundreds of years. Scientists come from all over to study them, but I just like how they make me feel connected to the past. What do we have here? I muttered to myself, kneeling down to look at some mushrooms I'd never seen before. Their caps were an odd blue-black color that didn't seem natural. In all my years in these woods, I'd never come across anything like them. I took out my notebook and quickly sketched them. As I continued walking, something felt off. The trees around me started to look sick. Just a few yards back, everything was green and alive, but here the plants looked drained, like all the color had been sucked out of them. The creek changed too. The clear water I'd been following suddenly turned dark and murky. I checked upstream for fallen branches or anything that might be causing the change, but found nothing. Looking up, I noticed birds flying in circles overhead. That wasn't right. This time of year they should be heading south, not spinning around like they were confused. Then I heard it, faint flute music drifting on the breeze. I froze, listening hard. No one should be out here. This section of the park was miles from any camping areas, and I hadn't approved any permits for this zone. "Hello," I called out. My voice echoed back at me, but the music continued. I realized something else was wrong too. The bugs were gone. No mosquitoes buzzing around my head, no dragonflies over the water, not even ants on the ground. In Illinois in early fall, that just doesn't happen. A cloud passed over the sun, and I shivered as the temperature dropped suddenly. Looking up, I saw a single dark cloud hovering directly overhead, not moving despite the breeze I could feel on my skin. I've seen a lot of strange things in these woods, but nothing like this. The quiet felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. I should have turned back right then, but I didn't. That's the thing about me. I need to know. It's been both my strength and my weakness ever since Vietnam. Yeah, Vietnam. Most people are surprised when they learn I served as a nurse. There, I was just 22, patching up boys not much younger than me, watching too many of them die despite everything I did. After seeing those horrors, I needed somewhere quiet to heal. These woods became my medicine. I'm good at what I do now. Published 2 papers on the local plant life. The other rangers call me when they can't identify something. I've mapped more of Shawnee's hidden corners than anyone. My ex-husband used to say I cared more about trees than people. Maybe that's partly why our marriage fell apart 3 years ago, along with his drinking and my nightmares. The divorce was nasty. Since then, I've learned to rely on myself. Just me, my supplies, and these woods. I pulled out my leather journal, my most prized possession. Its pages were filled with sketches of plants, notes about weather patterns, changes I've noticed over the years. Some might call it obsessive, but I call it paying attention. My hand brushed through my hair, dark with streaks of grey that started showing up after the divorce. Not that I care much about looks out here. At 35, I have more important things to worry about. The cold was making my right leg ache. An old reminder of a helicopter crash during an emergency evacuation. In Nam, the doctors put me back together with a steel rod and a lot of stitches. It usually only bothers me in bad weather. Dave, the head ranger, has been worried about me lately. "Joe, you're becoming a hermit," he told me last week. I just shrugged. Maybe I am. But I understand the forest in a way my colleagues don't. My grandmother was Cherokee. She used to tell me that our family has always had a special connection to the land. Listen with more than your ears, she'd say. The earth speaks to those who know how to hear it. Right now, it seemed to be whispering a warning. I touched the hunting knife at my belt, my father's. He taught me how to use it, how to throw it with enough precision to hit a target 20 paces away. Hope you never need it, he'd said. But better to have skills you don't use than need skills you don't have. I should have been heading back to the station. The sun was getting lower, and those nightmares I'd been having lately made me less eager to be in the deep woods after dark. For weeks, I'd been dreaming of something ancient watching me from beneath the ground, something that had been here, long before people. As I turned to head back, those dreams suddenly felt less like dreams and more like warnings. Something wasn't right at Deadfall Creek, and I had a sinking feeling I was about to find out what. I kept walking along the creek, my boots sinking slightly into the soft mud. That's when I saw them. Perfect circles pressed into the creek bed, each one exactly the same size, about 6 feet across. They weren't made by any animal I knew, and they definitely weren't human footprints. "What the hell?" I whispered, kneeling, to touch the edge of one circle. The mud felt cold, colder than it should have been. I stood up and looked around, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. That's when something caught my eye up in a tree. Something that shouldn't be there. Deer, not on the ground where it belonged, but hanging in the branches at least 20 feet up. No mountain lion could have dragged it that high. I moved closer, my heart beating faster. The deer looked wrong. Its body was perfectly intact. Not torn or chewed, but it hung limp, completely drained of blood. Not a drop had spilled on the ground below. "This isn't natural," I said out loud, just to hear a human voice, even if it was only my own. I pulled out my compass to mark the location on my map. The needle spun wildly, spinning and spinning without stopping. I tapped the glass, thinking it was broken, but then I noticed it only went crazy when I pointed it toward a particular rock formation nearby. The limestone outcropping was covered in strange symbols. I'd studied the local Native American petroglyphs for years, but these were different. They didn't match anything I'd ever seen in books or during my time with the Forest Service. I reached for my radio to call it in. Instead of the usual static, I heard voices, faint and distorted, like a recording played backward. I couldn't make out the words, but they sent a chill up my spine. "Dave, anyone copy?" I said into the radio. No response, just those strange backward whispers. I decided to check the creek bank for any tracks that might explain what was happening. That's when I found them. Footprints in the mud that turned my blood cold. They were shaped somewhat like human feet, but huge, nearly 2 feet long, and they only had 3 toes each. Whatever made them had been walking on 2 legs. The air around me changed. It smelled like a thunderstorm was coming, that sharp metallic smell of ozone mixed with something coppery like blood. But the sky was clear, except for that one strange cloud still hanging overhead. I turned back to the creek and froze. The water was flowing upstream. I blinked hard, sure I was seeing things, but no. The creek was definitely flowing backward against gravity, creating small whirlpools that seemed to glow from within with a pale blue light. Nearby trees caught my attention next. The bark on the old oaks was peeling away in perfect 6-sided shapes like honeycomb patterns. Under the bark, the sap glowed amber, dripping slowly but not reaching the ground. Instead, it vanished into thin air a few inches down. I checked my watch, 3:33 p.m. As I looked at it, the second hand twitched once and stopped. I wound it, tapped it, even shook it, but it wouldn't start again. Stuck at 3:33, like time itself, had stopped in these woods. A bark in the distance made me jump. A dog came crashing through the underbrush, a German shepherd with a search and rescue vest from the next county over. I recognized him as Ranger, who worked with Mark from Hardin County. "Hey boy, where's Mark?" I asked, kneeling down. The dog whimpered and pressed against my legs, trembling. His vest was torn and muddy. There was no sign of his handler. Ranger refused to move back in the direction he'd come from. When I tried to lead him that way, he pulled back so hard he nearly choked himself on his collar. His eyes kept darting to the shadows between the trees. Something had terrified this highly trained search dog, and whatever it was, it might still have Mark. I patted my belt where my knife hung and checked that my flashlight was working. The sun would be setting in a couple of hours. If Mark was hurt somewhere in these woods, I needed to find him fast. "Come on, boy," I said to Ranger, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Let's go find Mark." But the dog wouldn't budge in that direction. His eyes were fixed on something in the trees that I couldn't see. Then I heard a twig snap, and I realized we weren't alone. I stood perfectly still. Ranger pressed against my legs, his whole body shaking. Between the trees, about 30 yards away, something moved. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, but then it shifted. It looked like a person standing upright in the distance, but something was wrong with its head. Instead of a human head, the shape had what looked like the head of a dog or wolf, long and pointed. "Hello," I called out, thinking it might be a lost hiker wearing some kind of hat or hood. "This is Park Ranger Winters. Do you need help?" The shape dropped to all fours in one smooth motion. No person could move like that. The way it happened was all wrong. Too fluid, too quick. I felt the hairs on my arms stand up. I pulled out my flashlight, even though it was still daylight, and pointed it toward the shape. 2 yellow eyes reflected back at me, glowing much brighter than they should have. I moved the light away, but the eyes kept glowing like they had their own light. Inside them, whatever this thing was, it was big. When it stood up again on its hind legs, it must have been 9 feet tall. Its dark fur was matted with mud from the creek and something that looked horribly like fresh blood. A low sound filled the air. I couldn't exactly hear it, but I could feel it vibrating in my chest. It made my heart race and my stomach twist with a fear I hadn't felt since the worst days in Vietnam. Ranger whimpered and pressed his nose into the ground. I started backing away slowly. The thing, this creature, moved to the right, then circled left. It was cutting off the trail I'd come in on, like it was smart, like it was trying to trap me. With shaking hands, I pulled out my camera. If I was going to die out here, at least there would be proof of what killed me. But when I aimed it at the creature, the plastic camera body started to soften and melt in my hands. I dropped it with a yelp. It hadn't felt hot, but it was now just a puddle of melted plastic on the ground. What happened next made me question my own eyes. The creature walked straight toward a fallen tree trunk blocking its path. Instead of climbing over, it walked through it, like the solid wood was just fog. 1 second the creature was on one side of the massive log, the next it was on the other, without breaking stride. Everywhere it stepped, the ground smoked slightly. Small trails of vapor rose from its footprints. The plants around its tracks blackened and shriveled before my eyes. I turned to run, but froze when I heard a frightened squeal. A fox darted out from under a bush, racing away from the creature. It was fast, but the thing was faster. It caught the fox in just 3 bounds. I wish I could forget what happened next. The creature didn't bite the fox or tear it apart. Instead, the fox just sank into the creature's body like it was being absorbed. I could see the poor animal's shape under the creature's skin, still moving, still struggling to escape. "Oh my God," I whispered, my hand over my mouth. Those yellow eyes locked onto mine. The creature's head tilted, almost like it was curious, like it was studying me. Ranger broke free from his fear and bolted, racing back the way we had come. The creature watched him go, but didn't follow. It was focused on me now. I knew I should run, but my legs wouldn't move. My mind kept trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This thing wasn't an animal, at least not any animal that should exist. People called it the Dog Man, according to old stories I'd always dismissed as campfire tales. Those stories didn't seem so foolish now. I took one careful step backward, then another. The creature matched my movements, stepping forward each time I stepped back. It was herding me, I realized, pushing me deeper into the forest, away from the main trails. My back hit a tree, and I felt trapped. The creature was only 20 feet. Away now, those yellow eyes never blinking. The low sound in my chest grew stronger, making it hard to think. Lightning flashed overhead, and thunder rolled across the sky. The weather had changed in minutes, dark clouds now covering the sun. Rain began to fall, light at first, then pouring down in sheets. The creature paused, looking up at the sky. It seemed confused by the sudden storm. I took my chance. I ran. Behind me I heard a howl that no wolf or dog could make, too deep, too wrong. The sound followed me as I crashed through the underbrush, rain plastering my hair to my face, my boots. Slipping in the sudden mud. The ranger station was 15 miles away, but I knew these woods. I knew places to hide, places where I might lose this thing, if it could be lost at all. I splashed through the creek, hoping the water might hide my scent. The current was flowing normally again, at least. Small miracles. As I rounded a bend, I saw a shape ahead of me on the path. My heart nearly stopped. How had it gotten in front of me? I'd been running flat out. I changed direction, heading up the slope away from the creek. The rain made everything slippery, but fear gave me strength I didn't know I had. My leg ached from the old injury, but I pushed through the pain. Every time I thought I'd put some distance between us, the creature would appear ahead of me or to the side, those glowing eyes watching from between the trees. It was playing with me, like a cat with a mouse, and I was running out of places to run. The storm grew stronger. Rain hammered down through the trees, making it hard to see more. Then a few feet ahead, thunder cracked overhead, shaking the ground. In a way, the storm was a blessing. It gave me cover, made it harder for the creature to track me. I splashed through a shallow stream, hoping the water would hide my trail. My lungs burned, and my injured legs screamed with pain, but I couldn't stop. Not with that thing behind me. The dwarf creature seemed to be using the creek like a highway. Whenever I got near water, it would appear, those yellow eyes glowing through the rain. It was forcing me to move deeper into the forest, away from any paths that might lead to safety. As I crested a small hill, I heard voices, human voices. Through the trees, I saw a small clearing with 3 tents. College kids, from the look of them, huddled under a tarp to stay dry. They were camping illegally, but that was the least of my concerns right now. "Hey!" I shouted, half running, half limping toward them. "You need to pack up, now!" They looked up, startled. 2 guys and a girl, probably in their early 20s. "Ah, you a ranger?" one of the guys asked, looking at my uniform. "Yes, there's no time to explain. Something dangerous is out here. We need to move right now." My voice was shaking. The second guy laughed. "What, like a bear? We hung our food up." "It's not a bear," I said, looking nervously over my shoulder. "Please, just trust me." "Lady, you look crazy right now," the first guy said. "We're not going anywhere in this storm." I could feel time running out. "Listen to me. Your lives are in danger." There's something. A howl cut through the sound of the rain, closer than I expected, much closer. The girl heard it too. "What was that?" "That didn't sound like a wolf." "It's not," I said quietly. "Get your stuff. We need to move." The first guy stood up, annoyed. "Look, Ranger, whoever you are, we're not breaking camp because you heard some coyote and got spooked." He never finished his sentence. The creature burst from the trees behind him, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. Before I could even shout a warning, it had him. One moment he was standing there arguing with me, the next he was gone, dragged into the darkness with just a short, cut-off scream. The girl screamed. The other guy stood frozen in shock. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing the girl's arm. "Now!" We ran. The 3 of us crashed through the undergrowth, blind with panic. Behind us came sounds no human should ever have to hear. Then the second guy tripped on a root and went down hard. The girl and I stopped. turning back. "Get up!" she screamed at him. "Kevin, get up!" But it was too late. The creature was on him in seconds. This time I saw it clearly despite the rain, saw how it tore into him, saw how it fed. The girl's screams turned to silent sobbing. I pulled her along, knowing we couldn't help Kevin now. "What is that thing?" she gasped as we ran. "I don't know," I admitted, "but it's hunting us." We stumbled through the forest for what felt like hours, the storm still raging around us. The girl, Sarah was her name, had gone quiet with shock. I had to practically drag her along. "There's a cave system nearby," I told her, trying to keep her focused. "If we can reach it, maybe we can hide." But Sarah was falling apart. The horror of watching her friends die had broken something inside her. She kept looking back, jumping at every sound, slowing us down. When we finally found the cave entrance, I had to push her inside. The narrow opening was half hidden by bushes. Easy to miss if you didn't know it was there. Inside, the sound of the rain faded. I clicked on my flashlight, checking our surroundings. The beam caught something on the cave wall. Markings, symbols. They looked like the ones I'd seen on the limestone outcropping earlier, but older, worn by time. My grandmother told stories. "About these caves," I whispered. "Said the old people marked them as warning places, places not to go." Sarah wasn't listening. She sat huddled against the wall, arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly. I moved deeper into the cave, my flashlight revealing more symbols. These looked almost like instructions, though I couldn't read them. The beam caught something else, something that made my blood freeze. A pile of bones in the corner, human bones yellowed with age, and beside them a rusty metal box. I pried it open. Inside was an old leather journal, its pages yellow and brittle. The date on the first page read 1879. "Journal of Thomas Mercer, Geological Survey," I read aloud. "Have encountered strange phenomena in the limestone caves near Deadfall Creek. The locals refuse to guide us here. Speak of an old evil that walks like a man but hunts like a wolf." I flipped through the pages quickly. The journal described encounters with the same creature we were facing now. It had been here for a long, long time. Deeper in the cave, I found more evidence, newer items. A backpack from the 1950s, a camera from the 1970s, a hiking boot that couldn't be more than a few years old. This thing had been taking people for generations, and no one had connected the disappearances. Sarah's voice startled me. "It's coming." She stood at the cave entrance, staring out into the rain. "I can feel it." I hurried back to her, pulling her deeper into the cave. "We need to keep moving." "Why bother?" she said, her voice flat. "It's going to get us anyway." "No," I said firmly. "I'm not giving up." My mind raced, trying to piece together what I'd learned. The creature stayed near Deadfall Creek. It never wandered far. Why? What kept it here? Then I remembered something from my geology classes. This whole area was limestone, calcium carbonate. In the old stories my grandmother told, creatures of darkness were often weakened by calcium. It was why they couldn't cross running water, why they hated bones. The cave ceiling was low here, the passages narrow. If I could somehow bring it down. My time in Vietnam came back to me. I'd worked with demolition teams a few times, learned how structure points worked. "Sarah," I said, gripping her shoulders, "I need you to do something. It's important." She looked at me with empty eyes. "I need you to run. When I tell you, run straight out of the cave. Make noise. Draw it in here. You want me to be bait?" A tiny spark of anger lit in her eyes. "No," I said. "I want you to be the distraction. I'm going to trap it." I explained my plan. The support columns in this section of cave were thin. If I could weaken them enough, a strong impact might bring the ceiling down. "What if it gets me before I get back here?" she asked. I handed her my knife. "It won't help much, but it's something. Just run straight out, then circle back. I'll be ready Working quickly, I used a sharp rock to score deep lines in the limestone columns, hitting the natural weak points. The whole time, I listened for sounds from outside. Sarah stood at the cave entrance, knife clutched in her hand. "I think it's close," she whispered. I positioned myself by the weakened column. "Now, Sarah, run!" She bolted from the cave, screaming at the top of her lungs. The sudden noise after our whispers was shocking. I counted silently, giving her time to get clear, then circled back. Then I heard it. The sound of something large moving fast through the undergrowth, coming toward the cave. Yellow eyes appeared at the entrance, glowing even brighter in the darkness. The creature ducked its head, entering slowly, sniffing the air. I pressed myself against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. It moved deeper into the cave, following our scent. When it reached the narrowest part, right between the columns I'd weakened, I struck. I slammed my body against the scored pillar with every ounce of strength I had. Nothing happened. The creature turned, those yellow eyes fixing on me. It let out that low sound again, the one I felt in my chest more than heard. Desperate, I grabbed a large rock and smashed it against the column. Once, twice. On the third hit, I heard a crack, then another. The creature looked up just as the ceiling began to give way. Rocks crashed down, tons of limestone falling at once. The creature howled, a sound of rage and pain that would haunt my nightmares forever. I turned and ran, dust and debris chasing me out of the cave. The whole hillside seemed to be collapsing. Outside, I found Sarah hiding behind a tree. Together, we watched as the cave entrance disappeared under rubble. The storm was passing. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. "Is it dead?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But it's trapped, at least for now." We made it back to the ranger station the next morning. They sent out search teams for the missing students, but only found one body. The other was never recovered. No one believed our story. They wrote it off as animal attacks, maybe a bear, maybe a pack of coyotes. The official report mentioned nothing about 9-foot creatures with glowing eyes. Sarah was hospitalized for shock. Last I heard, she still wouldn't talk about what happened. As for me, I tried to tell them, tried to explain. But after the third psychological evaluation, I gave up. My voice gave out a week after the incident. The doctors called it psychosomatic trauma, said it would come back eventually. It never did. I still work at Shawnee, but I stay away from Deadfall Creek now. Instead, I keep detailed journals, maps, warning signs that only those who know what to look for will understand. Every full moon, I check the cave site. Make sure the rubble hasn't shifted. Make sure nothing has dug its way out. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon is dark, I think I can feel it down there, waiting, healing, growing stronger. The old stories say you can't kill something. That was never truly alive. You can only trap it and hope the prison holds, so I keep watch, and I write my warnings. And I pray that no one ever clears away those fallen rocks, because I know what's waiting underneath. My name is Marcus Reeves. I've been a park ranger at Coconino National Forest for almost 15 years now, but what happened last summer still keeps me up at night. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know, even if no one ever believes me. It all started on a warm Tuesday afternoon in July 1985. I was driving my patrol jeep through the tall ponderosa pines, just like I did every day. The sun was getting low, making the orange bark of the trees glow like they were on fire, but not the bad kind of fire, the kind that makes you want to stop and stare. The air smelled amazing that day. You know, that sweet vanilla scent that comes from hot pine needles? It was everywhere, mixing with the dusty smell of the desert soil. Those are the smells of home to me, the smells I grew up with. I remember looking up through my windshield and seeing red-tailed hawks circling in the sky. They were riding the warm air that rose from the canyon walls, just floating up there without a care in the world. Everything seemed so peaceful. I pulled up to Widow's Point Overlook around 5 o'clock. It's usually our busiest spot. Families taking photos, hikers resting, tourists oohing and eyeing at the view. The red sandstone formations below look like they're from another planet, especially when the shadows start to stretch across them like fingers. But that day, there was nobody. Not a single car in the parking lot besides mine. No hikers, no families with noisy kids, nothing. That's weird, I said out loud to myself. The weather was perfect, not too hot, with a nice breeze. It was the third day in a row with no visitors, which never happens in July. Peak tourist season, and suddenly everyone decided to stay away. It didn't make sense. Then I heard it, a faint drumming sound coming from somewhere deep in the canyon. I know the rules better than anyone, and no one had permits for any kind of gathering down there. I made a note to check it out, though part of me didn't want to. The sun dipped behind a cloud just then, and everything turned blood red for a minute. The rocks, the trees, even my hands on the steering wheel, all bathed in this deep crimson light. A chill ran up my spine despite the warm day. Something felt off. I turned on my radio to call it in, but all I got was static. Not the usual kind, though. This static had a rhythm to it, almost like someone tapping out a code. It wasn't Morse. No Morse code from my dad, but it definitely had a pattern. Hello? Ranger station? This is Marcus at Widow's Point. Anyone copy? Nothing but that weird static. I got out of the Jeep, and that's when I saw the dust devil. You know, one of those little dirt tornadoes? Except this one wasn't moving. It was just spinning in the same spot at the edge of the canyon, like it was stuck there. But there was wind. I could feel it on my face, moving in a completely different direction. As the sun got lower, the shadows started doing things they shouldn't. I'd look at a rock formation, and it would seem normal. But when I looked away, and then glanced back from the corner of my eye, it looked different. Like it had shifted a few feet, or changed shape entirely. When I stared straight at it, though, everything looked normal again. I've spent my whole life in these woods. I know every trail, every rock, every tree. But standing there, as the day turned to evening, for the first time ever, I felt like a stranger here. Like the forest I grew up in suddenly didn't recognize me. And worse, I had the feeling it didn't want me there. I should probably tell you a bit about myself. Being a forest ranger wasn't just a job I picked. It's in my blood. My grandpa helped make this forest what it is today, way back in the 1930s. He drew the first maps of these trails and marked where the boundaries should be. Dad followed in his footsteps, and so did I. Before I became a regular ranger, I was on the firefighting crew for 7 years. Those were tough days. Carrying heavy gear up steep hills, breathing in smoke and facing walls of flame taller than houses. I was good at it too, until I hurt my back pretty bad during a big fire in '82. The doctors said I could still be a ranger, just not a firefighter anymore. Some days my back still aches when rain is coming. Growing up around here means I know a lot about the local tribes too. The Hopi and Navajo people whose ancestors lived on this land long before mine did. I'm not native myself, but I had many friends from the reservations as a kid. They taught me to respect the sacred places in the forest, even if I don't always understand all their traditions. My face has seen a lot of sun over the years. Sarah used to joke that I had a permanent tan even in winter. Sarah was my wife. She died 2 years ago. Car accident on the highway during a storm. The laugh lines around my eyes turned into something else after that. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the Jeep window and hardly recognize the sad-looking man staring back. I still carry my grandpa's old notebook everywhere I go. It's got frayed edges and water stains, but it's filled with notes about the forest, when certain flowers bloom, where the elk like to gather in winter, which creeks run dry in August. Sometimes I add my own observations. It makes me feel connected to him, even though he died before I was born. People think rangers are just there to tell tourists not to litter or feed the wildlife. But there's more to it than that. You start to feel the forest like it's part of you. I can tell when something's not right, same way you can feel when someone's watching you from behind. It's not magic or anything, just paying attention for a long time. After Sarah died, I started drinking too much. Whiskey mostly. It was bad for a while, showing up late for work, forgetting things, snapping at people who didn't deserve it. My boss Jim could have fired me, but instead he helped me get help. I haven't touched a drop in 18 months now. These days I spend my free nights looking at the stars. There's an old fire lookout tower that nobody uses anymore, and I go up there with my telescope. No city lights for 100 miles means you can see things most people never will. Shooting stars, satellites, even the arm of the Milky Way stretching across the sky. It helps me feel small in a good way, like my problems aren't as big as they seem. Not everyone around here likes me. The cattle ranchers especially. They think I'm too strict about where their cows can graze. But rules are rules, and the forest needs protecting. My dad's ranger badge sits in a small frame on my dashboard. It got bent during a big forest fire in 1963 when a burning branch fell on him. He kept wearing it anyway, dent and all. I had it fixed after he passed, but you can still see where the metal was damaged. The strangest thing, though, for weeks now, I've been having the same dream. I'm buried alive under red sand, not all at once, but slowly, grain by grain. It piles up on my chest until I can't breathe, but I never die. I just lie there, trapped. I wake up gasping for air, sheets soaked with sweat. Night after night, the same dream. It's why I've been looking so tired lately. As I stood at Widow's Point that evening, watching the strange dust devil spin, I couldn't shake the feeling that my dreams and what was happening in the forest were somehow connected. And that scared me more than anything. I decided to walk along the canyon rim to clear my head. That's when I saw them. Strange markings carved into a rock face. They looked like cave drawings, with odd symbols and stick figures in positions. That made no sense. The weird thing was, I checked this exact spot yesterday during my rounds. These markings weren't there then, I'm sure of it. I took photos with my work camera and touched the carvings with my fingers. They weren't painted, and they were carved deep into the stone. How could someone cut into solid rock overnight without making noise or leaving any tools behind? I'd set up some wildlife cameras last week to track a mountain lion that had been spotted near the tourist trails. I decided to check them on my way back to the Jeep. When I looked at the footage, everything from daytime was normal. Rabbits hopping by, deer drinking from a stream, a fox sniffing around. But every night from sunset to sunrise, there was nothing but static. Not a single clear image. All 3 cameras showed the same thing. Battery problems, I muttered to myself, but I didn't believe it. The cameras were brand new, and I had checked them myself. As I walked back toward Widow's Point, I passed a juniper tree with something strange around it. Ravens, at least 15 of them, sitting in a perfect circle on the ground. Ravens don't do that. They're usually noisy, fighting over food or flying around. But these birds were completely still, watching me with their heads tilted slightly. Like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. I took a step toward them, and they didn't move. I clapped my hands. Nothing. They just stared. Only when I was about 10 feet away did they suddenly fly up all at once, making me jump back. They circled 3 times overhead and then flew off toward the canyon, moving together like they shared one mind. The temperature started doing crazy things. I felt sweat running down my back one minute. Then I was shivering the next. My watch showed the temperature dropping from 85 degrees to 65 in seconds, then shooting back up again. Heat waves rippled across the path ahead of me, even though the evening was cooling down. Near one of the scenic viewpoints, I found a backpack leaning against a bench. No one around, just an abandoned blue backpack. I'm supposed to turn in lost items, so I picked it up. Inside was a water bottle, some trail, mix a map, normal hiking stuff, but there was also a small black journal. I know I shouldn't have read it, but I needed to find out who it belonged to. The first few pages were regular travel notes. Great sunset today, hiked 5 miles, that kind of thing. But the entries from the last 3 days were different. Day 8, something followed me on the trail today. When I turned around, nothing was there, but I could feel it watching. Day 9. The shadows move wrong here. They don't follow the sun like they should. There's a space between sunset and night where they walk on their own. Day 10. I can hear it breathing outside my tent at night. Not animal breathing, not human either. Something else. I'm leaving tomorrow. But they hadn't left. Or at least, they'd left without their backpack. I put everything back inside and slung it over my shoulder. I'd take it to Lost and Found, but something told me no one would ever come looking for it. On my way back, I passed a stream bed that had been bone dry for months. Now water was flowing through it. Not much, but a steady trickle. I knelt down and dipped my fingers in. The water was warm, almost hot, and smelled like metal, like copper, like blood. That's when my radio crackled to life, making me jump. Through the static, I heard a child's voice counting backwards in what sounded like Old Spanish, the kind they spoke hundreds of years ago. Tres, dos, once. I don't speak much Spanish, but I know numbers. 13, 12, 11. The voice continued counting down slowly, getting quieter with each number. By the time it reached uno, it was just a whisper. Then silence. I tried calling the ranger station again, but got nothing but static. Back at my jeep, I pulled out my grandfather's notebook. I remembered him writing about strange happenings in the forest. I flipped through the yellowed pages until I found it. Notes from 1947, almost 40 years ago. June 17th, 1947. Animals acting strange. Temperature fluctuations. Markings appearing on rocks overnight. June 18th, 1947. Radio picking up voices that shouldn't be there. Water flowing uphill in Dead Man's Creek. June 19th, 1947. All park personnel evacuated. No explanation given. Will return in 3 days. There was nothing else about it. Just wrote that they returned on June 22nd and everything was normal again. No explanation of what happened or why they left. As I walked along the path back to my jeep, pine cones started falling from the trees. Not random like they usually do, but in a rhythm. Tap, 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 like footsteps following me. When I stopped, they stopped. When I walked, they started again. I pulled out my compass, thinking I'd double-check my location before heading back. The needle spun wildly for a moment, then stopped, pointing firmly southwest. I turned in a circle, but no matter which way I faced, the needle kept pointing to the same spot, about 2 miles southwest of where I stood. Something was there. Something was calling me. And despite every instinct telling me to get in my jeep and drive far away, I knew I had to find out what it was. I grabbed my flashlight, water bottle and radio from the jeep, though I doubted the radio would work. The sun was setting fast now, painting the sky in deep oranges and purples. I should have headed back to the ranger station. That would have been the smart thing to do. But something pulled me toward that spot my compass was pointing to. I'd hiked about half a mile when I saw it. A coyote sitting on top of a large boulder watching me. We get plenty of coyotes around here, but this one was wrong. Its legs were too long, its body too thin, and its eyes, they weren't animal eyes. They looked human, aware in a way that made my skin crawl. "Hey," I called out, trying to scare it away. The animal didn't move. It just kept staring at me with those eyes that knew too much. I reached for my radio. "Base, this is Marcus at Section 12. I've got an unusual animal sighting. Possible rabies. Request backup." The words had barely left my mouth when the coyote's jaw moved. "Base, this is Marcus at Section 12. Request cancelled. All clear here." It was my voice, exactly my voice, coming from the coyote's mouth. I dropped the radio. The animal's head tilted like it was amused by my fear. Then it started to change. I can't describe it any other way. Its body twisted and cracked, bones shifting under skin. The sound was like stepping on dry branches, but wetter, more alive. In seconds, the coyote was gone, and a raven sat in its place. A raven with the same knowing eyes. The bird took flight, circling once above my head before landing on a tree branch. Another series of wet cracks, and a mountain lion now looked down at me from the branch that should have broken under its weight. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The mountain lion jumped down, landing, silently despite its size. I turned to run and nearly screamed when I saw it was already behind me, blocking my path back to the jeep. Looking down, I saw its tracks in the soft dirt. They started as mountain lion prints, then halfway through a step became human footprints. Not animal prints that kind of looked like human ones, actual human footprints, bare feet with 5 toes, continuing from where the paw prints stopped. "What? Are you?" I whispered. The mountain lion opened its mouth, but instead of a growl, I heard Sarah's voice. "Marcus, why didn't you come home early that night? You promised." The exact words from our last phone call before her accident. Words no one else had heard. "You're not real," I said, my voice shaking. The creature cocked its head, then its form blurred. For a second, I saw Sarah standing at the edge of the trail, wearing the blue dress she was buried in. My heart stopped, even knowing it wasn't really. Her, I couldn't help taking a step forward. "Sarah," she smiled, but the smile went too wide, splitting her face in a way that no human mouth could stretch. I stumbled backward, tripping over a rock and falling hard on my back. When I looked up, the thing was gone. No, not gone. It was in 3 places at once. 3 ravens, perfectly identical, perched on 3 different trees in a triangle around me. I had no way to tell which was real, or if any of them were. I got to my feet and started running back, toward my jeep. I heard a sound like wings flapping, and suddenly the thing was ahead of me again. This time it wore the shape of Thomas, my old firefighting partner who died in the fire that injured my back. "You left me behind, Marcus," it said in Thomas's voice. "You knew that beam was going to fall." "No," I gasped. "I tried to warn you. I tried—" The thing that wasn't Thomas stepped closer. "You were jealous. You wanted my job as crew chief." "That's not true," I shouted, pulling my gun from its holster. I fired a warning shot into the air. The bullet passed through the Thomas shape, and the creature burst apart like a swarm of black beetles that scattered in all directions. My stomach lurched. But seconds later, the beetles came back together, swirling like a living tornado until they formed a perfect copy of me. My double smiled with my face. "Remember when you were 10? It asked in my childhood voice. "When you found that arrowhead in the restricted burial ground and took it home even though you knew better?" I felt the blood drain from my face. I had never told anyone about that, not even Sarah. I put the arrowhead back the next day, sick with guilt, but how could this thing know? The copy of me shifted again, becoming a young woman I'd never seen before. "Or when you were 16, it continued seamlessly, "and you kissed Lily Begay even though she was engaged to your friend." Another secret I'd never shared. The creature was pulling memories from my mind, like cards from a deck. It changed again, this time becoming something I'd never seen before. Not quite animal, not quite human. Its arms and legs were too long, its fingers ending in sharp points instead of nails. Antlers sprouted from its head, but they looked wrong, like they were made of twisted human fingers. "I know you, Marcus Reeves," it said, its voice now a dry whisper like wind through dead leaves. "I know every dark thing you've ever done, every secret, every shame." It stepped closer and I could smell it now, like old leather and dust and something rotten underneath. I raised my gun again, but my hands were shaking too badly to aim. "Stay back," I warned. The creature smiled, revealing teeth that were sharp. "Like a coyote's. Or what? You'll shoot me?" It laughed, and the sound was like rocks grinding together. Your grandfather tried that too. Didn't work then either. My grandfather? The pieces suddenly clicked together. The notes from 1947, the 38-year gap. Whatever this thing was, it had been here before. The sky was almost completely dark now. Stars were appearing overhead, but they looked wrong somehow. Too bright, too close, like they were watching me. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The creature cocked its head. "To play," it said simply. "To feed. To remind you that this was never your land to begin with." It lunged at me then. Faster than anything should be able to move. I fired my gun, but it didn't even slow down. I turned and ran blindly into the darkening forest, branches whipping my face, roots trying to trip me. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered something my grandfather had written, something about an old kiva, a sacred underground room, built by the ancestors of the Hopi. If I could find it, maybe I could. I didn't know what I could do, but I ran toward where I thought it might be, the sound of something not quite human crashing through the woods behind me. I ran until my lungs burned. The moonlight barely broke through the trees, but somehow I knew where I was going. Maybe it was luck. Maybe it was my grandfather guiding me somehow. I found the kiva just as I heard that thing crash through the underbrush behind me. The kiva looked like a small hill with a hole in the top, half hidden by bushes. Most tourists walk right past it without noticing. It's an ancient underground room where native people once held ceremonies. My grandfather's notes mentioned it had special symbols inside that might offer protection. I slid down through the roof. Entrance, landing on the packed dirt floor about 8 feet below. My flashlight showed a circular room, about 15 feet across with a low ceiling. The walls were made of stone and had faded paintings of animals, people and symbols I didn't understand. As soon as I got inside, I felt safer, like the air itself was different in there. The thing outside must have felt it too, because it started, circling the kiva, making a sound that wasn't quite a growl and wasn't quite human speech. I swept my flashlight around the room. The beam caught something reflecting in a small crack between two stones in the wall. I dug my fingers in and pulled out a small metal box, the kind old-time tobacco used to come in. Inside was a folded piece of paper, brittle with age. It was my grandfather's handwriting, but not from his ranger notebook. This was something else, something he'd hidden here on purpose. July 19th, 1947. If you're reading this, it's come back. The Navajo call it Yinaldlushi, skinwalker. It appears every 38 years when the stars align a certain way. It feeds on fear, shame, and regret. It gets inside your head and uses your own memories against you. My hands were shaking as I read on. It can't be killed with weapons, but it can be bound to a specific place. The old Hopi showed me how. You need blood from someone connected to this land and these words. Below was a prayer written in what looked like Hopi language. I couldn't pronounce half the words, but my grandfather had written out how they should sound underneath each one. Outside, the skinwalker was changing forms rapidly now. Through the hole in the ceiling, I caught glimpses. A coyote, then an owl, then something with too many limbs. It was getting angrier, more desperate. The walls of the kiva started to vibrate slightly, dust falling from the ceiling. I heard a crack, and part of the wall started to split. Whatever protection this place had, it wasn't going to last much longer. The note said I needed blood from someone connected to the land. My family had been rangers here for 3 generations. If that wasn't a connection, I didn't know what was. I also had something even more personal, Sarah's wedding ring. After she died, I put it on a leather cord and wore it around my neck. I'd been touching it without realizing as I read the note. The walls cracked again, louder this time. I had to act fast. I took out my pocket knife and cut my palm, not deep, just enough to draw blood. I smeared it on the wedding ring and held it tight in my bleeding hand. The skinwalker was directly above the kiva now. I could see its distorted, Shadow through the roof opening. It had settled on a form, a tall, thin creature with antlers and long, bony limbs. Its skin looked dried out, like old leather stretched over a frame. I started reading the words from my grandfather's note, stumbling over the unfamiliar sounds. As I spoke, the air in the kiva grew heavy, like before a thunderstorm. My ears popped from the pressure change. The skinwalker screamed, a sound like metal scraping on stone, and reached a long arm down through the opening. Its fingers were like twigs, each ending in a sharp point. I pressed myself against the wall, still reading, my voice getting stronger with each word. The creature's arms stretched impossibly, reaching for me, but it couldn't quite touch me. The space right around me seemed protected, like an invisible bubble. The kiva walls were really cracking now, stones shifting and falling. One hit my shoulder hard, making me drop the paper. I scrambled to pick it up, still clutching Sarah's ring in my bloody hand. I got to the last line just as the skinwalker finally broke through, bringing down half the ceiling. Dirt and rocks rained down, but I kept reading, shouting the final words as the creature lunged at me. There was a sound like thunder directly overhead, but the sky was clear through the broken ceiling. The skinwalker froze mid-leap, its body starting to twist and distort like smoke in wind. "You're bound," I said, though I don't know how I knew the words. "Bound to Red Hollow Canyon. You can't leave, and no one will ever go there again." The creature's body was being pulled away now, like it was being sucked toward the canyon a mile away. It clawed at the ground, leaving deep scratches in the stone floor. "No!" it screamed, using Sarah's voice one last time. "Marcus, please!" I almost weakened then, hearing her voice. But I thought of the empty backpack, of my grandfather's warnings, of all the harm this thing had done and would do again. "Go," I said firmly. "Go back to the hollow." With a final shriek, it was yanked away into the night, moving so fast it left a blur in the air behind it. I collapsed onto the dirt floor, exhausted. My hand was still bleeding and my shoulder hurt where the rock had hit it. But I was alive. I must have passed out because the next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the broken kiva roof. I climbed out carefully and walked back to my jeep, which was somehow right where I needed it to be, though I was sure I'd run miles away from it last night. When I got back to the ranger station, Jim took one look at me and called a doctor. I told them I'd fallen into an old kiva while investigating strange animal activity. They patched up my hand and shoulder and gave me a few days off. I used that time to arrange for Red Hollow Canyon to be permanently closed to the public, citing unstable rock formations. Jim thought I was crazy until the Geological Survey backed me up, showing evidence of potential landslides. It's been almost a year now. The tourists are back at Widow's Point, the animals act normal, and the weather is predictable again. Everything seems fine, except for my eyes. One morning, about a week after that night, I looked in the mirror and nearly fell over in shock. My right eye, which had been brown my whole life, was now a golden yellow color, exactly like the skinwalker's eyes had been. The doctor called it spontaneous heterochromia and said it was rare but not dangerous. But I know what it really is. It's a reminder that part of that thing is still with me and part of me is with it. A connection that won't be broken until the next cycle. 38 years from now. I'll be an old man by then, if I'm alive at all. But I've already started keeping better notes than my grandfather did. Whoever faces this thing next, maybe my son or daughter, if I ever have one, they'll be more prepared than I was. Sometimes when I'm alone in the forest at dusk, I feel it watching me from the direction of Red Hollow. I know it's still there, waiting. And despite everything, some small part of me is waiting too, because that's the thing about the skinwalker that scares me most. Not that it knew my deepest secrets, but that some part of me was drawn to it. Some dark piece of my soul recognized something in that creature, something ancient and hungry that lives in all of us, and in 38 years, when the stars align again, it will call to someone new. I just hope they find my notes and the strength to do what needs to be done. Until then, I'll keep watching, I'll keep guarding. And on quiet nights, when the wind blows from the direction of Red Hollow, I'll try not to listen too closely to what sounds like my name being whispered among the pines. My name is Natalie Reynolds. I'm a park ranger at Olympic National Park in Washington State. Right now, I'm walking through snow that comes all the way up to my hips on the Alpine Ridge Trail. The snow is perfect, untouched and bright white, stretching as far as I can see. The huge old cedar and hemlock trees stand tall around me like giant guards watching over the forest. Their branches hang low, heavy with weeks of snow from all the unusual winter storms we've been having. The afternoon. Sun makes the snow magical. Light bounces through little ice crystals, creating tiny rainbows across the white ground. I stop for a moment just to take it all in. I pull out my map and check it carefully. I need to make sure I'm going the right way to reach the weather station. No one has heard from the people there for 3 whole days, which isn't good. What strikes me most is how quiet it is up here. There's no wind blowing, no birds singing, not even the usual sound of snow settling. It's like the mountain is holding its breath. The air smells clean and fresh, like pine trees and snow. But then I notice something else, a faint smell that shouldn't be here. It smells a bit like something rotting, which is strange because the cold usually stops things from decaying. Up ahead, I can see where an avalanche came through earlier this winter. It left behind a path of broken trees. The way the jagged trunks stick up from the snow makes them look like hands reaching out of the ground. I try not to stare at them too long. Suddenly the sky changes. Thick clouds roll in, and within minutes the bright afternoon turns dark like evening. The change happens so fast it doesn't seem natural. I look down at the trail ahead and notice tracks in the snow. At first they look like elk prints, but as I get closer, I see they're actually footprints. Human-looking footprints, but enormous. They're almost twice the size of my boots. My heart beats a little faster as I wonder who or what made them. The temperature drops so quickly that the air feels like it's biting my skin. When I breathe out, my breath freezes instantly, making a strange tinkling sound as tiny ice crystals fall to the snow. Something isn't right on this mountain. I've worked in national parks for years, but I've never experienced anything like this. I grip my walking pole tighter and continue toward the weather station, trying to ignore the feeling that I'm being watched from the endless white forest around me. I wasn't always stationed at Olympic National Park. Before this, I worked at Yellowstone. I had to transfer after something bad happened there. I was tracking a poacher, someone hunting animals illegally in the park, when he saw me and shot at me. The bullet hit me and ended up stuck too close to my spine for doctors to safely remove it. Even now, it reminds me it's there with sharp pains that come and go. The rangers here value me because I know a lot about weather patterns and how to survive in high places where the air gets thin and cold. The winters at Olympic have been getting stranger and harder to predict, so my skills come in handy. I carry a small leather journal everywhere I go. In it, I write down stories from local tribes about weather signs and patterns. I started this project to honor my grandmother, who was Maka, one of the native tribes from this area. She taught me to read the sky long before I learned it in school. The pain from my old injury makes things harder. I can't rely on being strong like I used to, so I've had to get smarter about how I move through the wilderness. I plan my routes carefully and pack only what I really need. People often notice the streak of white hair among my short black hair. It wasn't always there. It showed up overnight after I was shot, like my body wanted to mark that day somehow. When I look in the mirror, that white streak reminds me how quickly life can change. The other rangers respect me, but they worry too. I keep taking the jobs nobody wants, the longest patrols in the most remote areas. Some might call it brave, but honestly, I just prefer being alone these days. Around my neck I wear a small amulet made of carved bone. My grandmother gave it to me. She said it would protect me from evil spirits. I never used to believe in such things, but lately I find myself touching it when I feel uneasy. My ex-husband Jake couldn't understand why I changed after the shooting. He wanted the old Natalie back, the one who laughed easily and didn't wake up screaming from nightmares. Our divorce papers were finalized just 3 months ago. Sometimes I miss him, but mostly I know he's better off. The elders from the local tribe started calling me Storm Crow after I correctly predicted 3 major storms that the Weather Service missed completely. I don't know how I do it. I just feel changes coming in my bones before the machines can detect them. The strangest thing is that I've been dreaming about this exact trail and the weather station for weeks now. The dreams were so real that I could feel the cold and smell the pine trees. When this assignment came up, I volunteered immediately, even though everyone said it was too dangerous with the recent storms. I didn't tell them about the dreams, they'd think I was crazy, but something is pulling me to that station, and I need to find out what it is. As I trudge through the snow, I can't shake the feeling that I've been here before, walking this same path towards something waiting for me. The strange footprints continue ahead, and I follow them, my hand touching the bone amulet at my neck for comfort. I stop suddenly when I spot something half buried in the snow. It's research equipment, the kind scientists use to take readings of the environment. Next to it is a clipboard, partially covered by snow. What makes my skin prickle with unease is the mug sitting there. And when I touch it, the coffee inside is still warm. Whoever was working here left in a hurry, and not long ago. I pull out my radio and try to call base camp. This is Ranger Reynolds checking in. Does anyone copy? Over. Instead of a reply, I hear something that makes me hold my breath, the sound of heavy breathing coming through the static. It's not words, just someone or something breathing hard. Hello? Who's there? Is anyone from the weather station hearing this? Over. No answer, just more breathing, then silence. I clip my radio back to my belt and look around carefully. That's when I notice something odd about the trees. The bark has been stripped away on several of them, but not like a bear would do it. These marks are much higher up, at least 10 feet off the ground. Whatever did this was either very tall or could climb really well. Walking a bit further, I come to a small clearing. What I see makes me stop in my tracks. There are 5 perfect snow angels pressed into the fresh powder. They look like the kind kids make when they lie down and wave their arms and legs. But there are no footprints leading to or from them. It's as if whoever made these shapes appeared out of nowhere and then vanished into thin air. My fingers are getting numb from the cold, so I pull out my digital thermometer to check just how bad it's getting. The screen flickers, then shows 103 degrees. That can't be right. It's definitely freezing cold, but not that cold. We'd all be instantly frozen solid at that temperature. I tap the device, but the reading stays the same. Something is messing with the electronics. Finally, the weather station comes into view ahead of me. The building looks intact. That's a relief. But as I get closer, I notice something impossible. The snow around the building is gone, creating a perfect circle of bare ground. It's like the snow melted away, but only in that exact circle. The ground shouldn't be bare when it's this cold. I approach carefully and open the door to the station. Inside, everything looks normal at first. Computers humming, lights on, but there's no sign of the 3 researchers who should be here. I find the maintenance logbook open on the desk. The entries stopped 3 days ago. The last one makes my blood run cold. It's watching from the white. It's learning our shapes. Who wrote that? What were they afraid of? I checked the meteorological readings from the past 3 days. The graphs show impossible patterns, air pressure dropping and rising, so dramatically that it should have created storms powerful enough to flatten the forest. But there were no such storms reported. On the wall is a calendar. Someone has marked 13 days with X's. I count the days between the first X and the last log entry. There are only 9. That doesn't make sense. How could they mark 13 days when only 9 passed? My satellite phone beeps with an incoming message. I pull it out and feel a chill that has nothing to do with the cold. The message is from my own phone number, but it's dated 3 hours in the future. Don't trust what you see in the mist. It's not what it appears to be. I stare at the phone, my hands shaking now. How is this possible? I'm the only one with this number, and I certainly didn't send myself any message, especially not from the future. A sound outside makes me look up. Through the window, I see a strange mist gathering, swirling in ways that mist shouldn't move. And in that mist, I swear, something is taking shape. I press my face to the window, trying to see more clearly through the gathering mist. That's when I spot it, a shadow darker than the rest, moving between the trees. It's tall, at least 8 feet, and walking upright on 2 legs. My first thought is that it's a person, maybe one of the missing researchers. "Hello," I call out, opening the door. "Is someone out there? Do you need help?" The strangest thing happens when my voice hits the air. It creates visible ripples, like when you drop a stone in water. The ripples move toward the shadow, and it seems to absorb them. My words disappear into it. I take a step outside, my hand resting on the bear spray at my hip. The figure stops moving. For a long moment, we just stay there, watching each other across the strange circle of bare ground. Then it does something that makes me question my own eyes. The snow near it starts to form into perfect balls, rising up and hovering in the air. They hang there for a few seconds before falling apart and dropping back to the ground. It's like the thing is playing with the snow, showing me it can control it. I look down at its tracks in the snow. They make no sense. In some places, the footprints barely dent the surface, like it weighs nothing at all. In others, they sink 6 feet deep, as if it suddenly weighed a ton. No animal changes its weight like that. The creature moves again, stepping slowly to stand beside a tall pine tree. Then it goes completely still. I have to blink several times because it seems to vanish, blending in with the trees so perfectly that I can only spot it when I notice its chest moving as it breathes, in perfect time with the creaking of branches. In the light wind, I need evidence of this thing. I pull out my camera and snap a photo. When I check the digital screen, what I see makes no sense. The image shows not one figure, but several overlapping shadows, all in positions where the creature had stood just seconds before. It's like it exists in multiple places at once, or in different times at the same time. A sudden wailing sound makes me jump. It's the avalanche warning siren, but it's coming from the creature, not the weather station. It's copying the sound perfectly, as if it has a speaker inside it. Then it makes other sounds. The crunch of my boots in snow, the click of my camera, even my own voice calling out, "Hello." Each sound is a perfect copy. The mist around the thing gets thicker, swirling faster, until it creates a miniature blizzard, with the creature at its center. I can barely see it now through the whirling snow, and I realize it's using the storm as both a hiding place and a weapon. I back toward the station door, not wanting to turn my back on it. That's when I see something impossible. The creature moves toward a rock face beside the station, and instead of stopping, it walks partly through it. Half its body disappears into solid stone, then emerges again like the rock isn't fully real. To it, my heart is pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears. This thing isn't natural. It's not a bear or a person or anything I've been trained to deal with in ranger school. I retreat into the station and lock the door behind me, though I doubt it would keep that thing out if it wanted to come in. The monitors on the weather equipment suddenly flicker to life, though I didn't touch them. Symbols appear on the screens, simple drawings that look like mountains, clouds, and what might be a doorway. The last symbol is unmistakable, a stick figure that I think represents a human. Next to it is a question mark. It's trying to communicate with me. The realization hits me like a physical blow. This thing, whatever it is, isn't just some animal. It's intelligent, and it wants something from me. Outside, the localized blizzard continues to swirl, and within it I can see the tall shadow moving, watching, waiting. I need to figure out what this creature is and what it wants, or I might never make it off this mountain alive. I don't have much time to think about the creature's attempt to communicate. The wind outside suddenly picks up, howling like nothing I've ever heard before. Snow swirls in a frenzy, and within minutes it's piling up against the weather station. The windows rattle as the storm grows stronger. This isn't a natural storm. Somehow I know the creature is making it happen. In less than an hour, the snow reaches the windowsills. Another hour, and I can't see out at all. The entire station is being buried. I check the door. It won't budge against the weight of snow. Pressing against it, I'm trapped. A loud crack makes me jump. Something hit the roof hard. Then another crack, and another. The creature is on top of the station, testing for weak spots. One of the windows shatters inward, sending glass and snow across the floor. I quickly stuff my jacket into the opening, but the cold is already seeping in. Metal groans as something pulls at the roof, trying to peel it open like a can. "What do you want?" I shout, though I'm not sure if it can understand me. I need to think. I need to figure out what this thing is and why it's here. My eyes fall on my grandmother's journal. I've collected so many stories about weather spirits and forest creatures. Could the answer be in there? With shaking hands, I flip through the pages until a particular drawing catches my eye. It shows a tall, shadowy figure standing in snow with swirling patterns around it. Beneath it is a name written in my grandmother's handwriting, Squall Atex Subu. According to the story, Squall Atex Subu was an ancient being that lived between worlds. It wasn't evil exactly, but it didn't belong in our world. It existed in a place of constant storms and cold, and if it ever crossed into our world, it would try to remake its surroundings to match its home. Another window breaks. Time is running out. I look at the weather station's computers, wondering if there might be clues there. I search through recent files and find something strange. A folder labeled Project Whiteout. Inside are reports about tests, equipment that was supposed to modify weather patterns. The scientists were trying to create controlled snow conditions, but according to the notes, something went wrong during their last test. Unexpected energy readings, one note says. Possible tear in atmospheric boundary layer. They tore something open. They created a hole between worlds, and this Squall Atex came through. The roof gives a terrible groan as something heavy moves across it. I need to find the missing scientists. If they created this problem, maybe they know how to fix it. I bundle up in every layer I can find and crawl through the broken window. The snow is packed so tightly that I can tunnel through it rather than sink. The creature seems to have moved away from the station for now. Following a hunch, I make my way toward a series of ice caves I know are nearby. The entrance is almost completely sealed with snow, but I dig my way in. The air inside is even colder than outside, but at least there's no wind. My flashlight beam cuts through the darkness, bouncing off ice walls. That's when I see them. 3 human shapes, the missing scientists, frozen in the ice, but not completely frozen. Their eyes move, following my light. They're alive in there, trapped but conscious. I press my hand against the ice near one woman's face, and suddenly strange images flood my mind. I see a swirling vortex of snow and light. I see the creature's homeland, a place of beautiful but terrible storms. I understand now. The scientists' minds are connected to the creature. It's using them somehow, learning from them. A low rumble shakes the cave. The creature has found me. I back away from the ice wall just as the shadow appears at the cave entrance. Hand touches the bone amulet at my neck, and it feels warm, warmer than it should be in this freezing cave. It's glowing faintly, and the creature seems to pull back slightly when the light touches it. A memory surfaces, my grandmother telling me the amulet resonates at a special frequency, one that spirits find disturbing. That's it. The creature doesn't like certain frequencies. I run back to the weather station, tunneling through snow and squeezing back through the broken window. The weather equipment includes sonic testing devices, tools that can produce and measure sound, waves. If I can find the right frequency, the building shakes as the creature lands on the roof again. I work faster, hooking up the sonic equipment to the station's main power supply. I set it to broadcast at the frequency my grandmother's stories described, a tone so low that human ears can barely detect it. When I turn it on, the effect is immediate. A shriek comes from outside, a sound like ice breaking and wind howling. The creature is in pain, but I've only weakened it temporarily. According to my grandmother's journal, the only way to truly send Squala Texu back is to close the door it came through. I look at the scientists frozen in the ice cave. The dimensional tear must be there, keeping them connected to the creature. I need to collapse that cave. In the station's emergency supplies, I find flares and some fuel for the generator. It's not much, but it might be enough to cause a controlled avalanche that would seal the cave. The creature's cries grow fainter as I head back toward the cave with my makeshift explosives. I can feel it weakening, retreating from the sound waves. Still broadcasting from the station, at the cave entrance, I set up the flares and fuel cans, positioning them where they should trigger a collapse. My hands shake as I light the longest burning flare. I have about 3 minutes to get clear, but as I turn to leave, I hesitate. The scientists are still in there, alive but trapped. If I collapse the cave, they'll be buried forever. Can I sacrifice 3 people to save everyone else? The creature's roar from outside decides for me. This thing could create storms powerful, enough to destroy entire communities if it fully adapts to our world. I can't let that happen. I'm sorry, I whisper to the frozen faces, and then I run. I'm halfway back to the weather station when the explosion echoes across the mountain. The ground shakes beneath my feet as snow and ice crash down, sealing the cave, and the tear between worlds, a howl unlike anything I've ever heard, rips through the air, rage and pain, and what almost sounds like grief. The creature's form appears, one last time, standing atop the snow-covered weather station. For a moment, our eyes meet across the distance. Then it begins to fade, becoming transparent, until it disappears completely. The unnatural storm dies almost instantly. The swirling, snow settles, and the clouds part to reveal stars overhead. But something is wrong with me. I can't feel my hands or feet anymore. At first I think it's just frostbite. But when I look down at my arms, I can see through them slightly, as if I'm partly fading away like the creature did. In sealing the tear between worlds, part of me got caught in between, not fully here, not fully there. Over the next few days, as rescue teams finally reach the weather station, doctors can find nothing physically wrong with me. My body is here, but something happened to me on that mountain. Months later, I discover that I can sense storms coming days before any equipment can detect them. My body reacts to atmospheric changes like a living weather station. The part of me that's caught between worlds feels the weather from both sides of the dimensional boundary. I still work as a ranger at Olympic National Park. I still wear my grandmother's amulet. And sometimes, when big storms are brewing, I think I can see a tall, shadowy figure watching me from between the trees, as if to remind me that the boundary between worlds is thinner than we think. Some nights, I dream of swirling snow and endless, storms. And in those dreams, I understand that Squalatex wasn't trying to hurt anyone. It was just lost and trying to find its way home, just like all of us sometimes. My name is William Martinez, but everyone calls me Will. I work as a park ranger here in Badlands National Park in South Dakota. Today started like most days, with me driving my truck along the dusty roads that wind through these strange rock formations. The sun is getting low in the sky now, painting everything in a warm golden light. All those layers in the rock walls are glowing amber and red. I've studied these rocks for years. Each stripe tells a story about millions of years of history, layer by layer. I just passed a small herd of pronghorn antelope. They were eating peacefully in one of the few grassy spots between the tall rock towers. It's nice to see wildlife thriving out here in this harsh place. I pull over to the side of the road to fill out my daily report. The air smells like sagebrush, kind of sweet and earthy, mixed with that special smell that clay gets when it bakes in the sun all day. I take a deep breath and notice something odd. It's too quiet. The wind is always blowing here, whistling between the rock columns and making the grasses sway. But right now there's nothing, not even a slight breeze, just stillness. It doesn't feel right. Looking up, I notice storm clouds gathering much faster than normal. The bottom of those clouds has a strange green glow with lightning flashing. Inside them, we don't usually get storms like this here. Something else is wrong too. I can see the prairie dog town from where I'm parked. Those little critters are usually running around, barking at each other, popping in and out of their holes. But their whole colony looks empty. Where did they all go? My radio crackles to life, making me jump. Through the static, I hear parts of an emergency message talking about unusual seismic activity, which means earth movements like earthquakes. But that's strange because we don't get earthquakes in the Badlands. As I step out of my truck, I notice the shadows around me. They're not right. Some of them are stretching in directions that don't match where the sun is setting, and a few of them seem to be moving on their own. The air feels heavy and hot, much hotter than it should be with the sun going down. Heat waves make the distant rock formations look like they're shimmering and dancing. Something is happening in my park, something I've never seen before. And deep down, I have a feeling that the strange things I've studied and tracked for years might finally be showing themselves. I wasn't always a park ranger. Before this, I taught geology at the university in Rapid City. I loved teaching students about how rocks form and change over time. But then I started noticing things in the Badlands that didn't fit what the textbook said. When I tried to tell other scientists about my findings, they laughed at me, called me crazy. So I left teaching and came here full-time instead. My mom was Apache and my dad was Mexican. They both taught me to respect the land and listen to what it tells us. My scientific training says one thing about these rocks, but the stories my grandparents told me say something else. Sometimes it's hard to know which to believe. I reach up and touch the long scar that runs from my left eye down to my jaw. I got it right here in these canyons when I was just 10 years old. I was climbing where I shouldn't have been, and a rock slide nearly killed me. Sometimes I still dream about being trapped under those rocks. But there's always something else in the dream too, something watching me from deep in the earth. Opening my truck's glove box, I pull out my journal. Its leather cover is worn smooth from years of handling. Inside are hundreds of sketches I've made of strange things I've found out here. Rocks that shouldn't exist, fossils in the wrong layers, patterns that can't be explained. I add a quick drawing of the weird shadows I just saw. Under my journal sits a stack of papers I've been avoiding. Divorce papers. Lisa finally got tired of me spending more time with rocks than with her. She said my obsession with the park's mysteries was pushing her away. Maybe she was right. The papers have been sitting there unsigned for 3 weeks now. I'm known around here as the fossil expert. I've helped discover 3 new dinosaur species that now have my name attached to them. The other rangers bring me anything unusual they'd find. But behind my back, I know some of them call me Spooky Martinez because of my theories about what's really happening in this place. My hand goes to the turquoise pendant I always wear. My grandmother gave it to me before she died. The Badlands has doorways, William, she told me. Doorways that should stay closed. This will help you see them, but also protect you from what lies beyond. I thought it was just an old superstition, but now I'm not so sure. Over the years, I've found caves and tunnels under the park that don't show up on any official map. I've been mapping them myself, creating my own secret atlas of what lies beneath our feet. Some of these tunnels seem to change each time I visit them. Others lead to dead ends that feel wrong somehow, like they're not really ends at all, just pauses. Lately, my dreams have been getting more vivid and strange. In them, I hear a voice calling from deep underground. It speaks in a language I've never heard before, but somehow I almost understand it. The voice seems to be calling my name, asking for help, or maybe warning me. I wake up with my heart pounding, and the taste of dirt in my mouth. That feeling is with me now as I step out of my truck and look around at the too quiet landscape. The strange stillness, the unnatural storm clouds, the weird shadows. It's like the Badlands are holding their breath, waiting for something to happen, and I think I'm right in the middle of it. I decide to check out more of the area before heading back to the ranger station. Something definitely feels off, and it's my job to make sure everything is safe. I walk around a bend in the path and freeze. There on the ground is a perfect circle of dead animals. Rabbits, small snakes, and several birds all arranged with their heads pointing to the middle of the circle. This isn't normal animal behavior. It's not natural for different species to die together like this, especially not in such a perfect pattern. I hurry back to my truck, wanting to radio this in. When I turn the key, nothing happens. The engine won't start. I try again and again, but it's completely dead. This makes no sense. I just got a brand new battery yesterday. I pop the hood and check the connections, but everything looks fine. It's like something just sucked all the power out. As I stand there wondering what to do next, I feel something strange through my boots. The ground is vibrating, not like an earthquake which is random and violent. This feels steady, almost like a pulse. Like something huge is breathing under the earth. Reaching into my pocket, I pull out my compass to try to figure out the best direction to walk for help. As I hold it in my palm, the needle starts spinning wildly. Then, right before my eyes, the metal needle begins to melt. It just turns to liquid, dripping onto the ground, even though there's no heat source. I drop the compass, my heart beating faster. I walk a little further, trying to stay calm. In a section of rock wall that I've passed 100 times before, something catches my eye. There in the stone are fossilized footprints. Human footprints. But that's impossible. This rock layer is from the Jurassic period, about 150 million years ago. Humans weren't around then, not even close. The sun has almost set now, but I notice my arms are turning red, like I've been sunburned. But I've been in the shade of the canyon walls for the past hour. It feels like the radiation is coming from the rocks themselves, not the sky. Ahead of me is a narrow canyon I need to pass through to get back to the main road. As I approach it, I see something that makes me doubt my own eyes. The rock walls seem to be moving, expanding and contracting, like they're breathing. I blink hard and look again. It's subtle, but it's happening. I reach for my water canteen, my throat suddenly dry from fear. When I unscrew the cap and tilt it to drink, a black, thick liquid pours out instead of water. I drop the canteen in shock, and where the liquid hits, direct sunlight, it sizzles and evaporates into thin air. My handheld radio, which has been silent, suddenly crackles to life. Through the static, I hear what sounds like people speaking, but not in English. It sounds like Lakota, one of the Native American languages from this region. But there are no active settlements broadcasting in the park, and these voices sound, old ancient even. I look up at the distinctive striped rock walls around me. The red, tan, and grey layers that have been fixed in place for millions of years are somehow changing. The stripes are shifting, rearranging themselves into shapes that look almost like writing, like the earth itself is trying to tell me something. I've studied these rocks my whole life, but I've never seen anything like this. Scientific explanations are failing me. Everything I'm seeing goes against what should be possible, and yet some part of me isn't surprised, like I've been waiting for this day. Like all my dreams and theories have been preparing me for whatever is happening now. The ground trembles again beneath my feet. The storm clouds overhead flash with green lightning, and somewhere in the distance I hear what sounds like an enormous wing beat. Something is coming, something big, and I'm trapped here with no vehicle, no communication, and nowhere to hide. I'm looking for shelter when a massive shadow sweeps across the ground. It's much too big to be a cloud. I look up, and what I see makes my breath catch in my throat. There's a tear in the sky. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the blue has been ripped open, showing something else behind it, something that shouldn't be there. Through this tear comes the biggest bird I've ever seen, but calling it a bird doesn't seem right. Its wings must be 60 feet across, wider than a house. It looks ancient, like the pterosaurs in the fossil record, but also like the Thunderbirds from my grandmother's stories. It's as if it belongs to many different times at once. The creature circles lower, and I duck behind a rock formation. As its wings brush against the storm clouds, lightning shoots out from the feather tips. The air fills with the smell of ozone, like the sharp smell after lightning strikes nearby. When it cries out, the sound is so powerful that the ground shakes. Cracks appear in the rock walls around me. Pieces of stone tumble down, revealing sparkly minerals inside that I've never seen before in all my years studying these formations. I watch in awe as the creature hovers near a lightning strike. Instead of flying away from the danger, it seems to absorb the electricity. I can actually see it growing larger after each bolt it takes in. It's feeding on the storm energy. As I try to back away to safety, I notice the creature is methodically destroying the paths out of this area. It's using precisely aimed lightning strikes to collapse canyon walls and block trails. It's trapping me here. The strangest thing is how it keeps changing. One moment it looks solid, all feathers, scales, and sharp beak. The next moment, it seems made of pure electricity, like living lightning that just happens to be shaped like a giant bird. I pull out my small voice recorder and manage to capture its cry. When I play it back at a slower speed, the sound forms. Words I almost recognize, like an ancient version of the Sioux language spoken in this region thousands of years ago. Even scarier, the giant bird isn't alone anymore. It touches ordinary hawks with its wingtips, sending electricity through them. These smaller birds begin to glow and change, becoming mini versions of the giant one. They spread out, searching the canyons like they're looking for something, or someone. I need to find shelter fast. The small Thunderbirds are getting closer, and the big one circles overhead. Each beat of its massive wings sends more tremors through the ground. My turquoise pendant grows warm against my chest. I remember my grandmother's warnings about doorways in the Badlands. Was this what she meant? Did she know this thing existed? With the smaller birds closing in and rocks falling all around me, I spot the entrance to one of the caves I've been mapping. If I can reach it, maybe I'll be safe underground. I run faster than I've ever run before, the air crackling with electricity. Around me, the cave entrance is just ahead when I feel the shadow of the giant Thunderbird pass over me again. I dive into the darkness of the cave just as a bolt of lightning strikes where I was standing seconds ago. The sound is deafening, and the flash is so bright it temporarily blinds me. When my vision clears, I'm lying on the cool ground inside the cave. Safe, at least for now, but I can hear the creature outside screaming its ancient cry. It knows where I am, and somehow I think it knows who I am too. Inside the cave, it's cool and damp. I turn on my flashlight and move deeper, away from the entrance where the Thunderbird's lightning strikes keep hitting. This is one of the unmapped tunnels I've been exploring over the years, but I've never gone very far into it. As my light sweeps across the walls, I see something that makes me stop in my tracks. The cave walls are covered with paintings, ancient paintings showing people and animals, but most importantly, a huge bird-like creature that looks exactly like what's hunting me outside. I examine the paintings carefully. They show the Thunderbird creature, but also what looks like rituals and ceremonies around it. Some drawings show people offering something to the bird, others show lightning coming from its wings. I've studied enough Native American art to recognize that these paintings are telling a story, maybe even instructions. Between the paintings are strange symbols carved into the rock. They're not any language I've seen before, but somehow they feel familiar, like I should know what they mean. My flashlight beam catches something on the ground. I bend down and find bones, human bones, and not just one set, but several. Beside one skeleton is an old park ranger badge from the 1930s. Next to another is a camera from maybe the 1950s. There are others too, all rangers or explorers from different times. I realize with a chill that I'm not the first to face this creature. The walls in this section of the cave have a strange shine to them. I touch one and feel a tingling in my fingertips. The rock is full of some kind of mineral that seems to repel electricity. When I hold my flashlight close, I can see tiny specks of it glittering everywhere. Maybe that's why the Thunderbird hasn't just blasted through the cave entrance with lightning. Looking closer at the wall paintings, I begin to understand the story they're telling. The Thunderbird isn't just a monster. It's some kind of guardian. The paintings show it sleeping underground until people dig too deep or take too much from the earth. With a sudden realization, I remember the news from last month about a new oil drilling operation that just started outside the park boundaries. They've been using new deep drilling techniques to reach deposits that were untouchable before. The Thunderbird is reacting to that invasion. It's awake because someone crossed a boundary they shouldn't have. I feel a strange connection to all this. My hand reaches up to touch the scar on my face, which has begun to tingle and warm up. Just like my turquoise pendant. The accident I had as a child in these same canyons, was it really an accident? Or was it a first meeting with this ancient being? Suddenly my radio crackles to life, but there's nothing but static. I try different channels. Nothing. The Thunderbird has created some kind of electrical dead zone around the whole area. No one is coming to help. I need a plan. Looking around, the cave. I notice how the special minerals in the walls seem to channel electricity in specific directions. Using rocks with these minerals, I could create a lightning rod system, something to direct the Thunderbird's electrical attacks away from me and into the ground. I work quickly, gathering pieces of the special rock and placing them in a line, leading from near the cave entrance deep into the ground. It's a wild idea, but it's all I have. Just as I finish, the cave entrance explodes in a shower of rock and dust. The Thunderbird has found me. Its massive form blots out the light from outside. Lightning crackles between its feathers as it forces its way into the cave opening that's much too small for it. The roof of the cave starts to collapse. Rocks crash down around me. I'm thrown to the ground by the force of it and suddenly find myself trapped in a narrow tunnel with rocks blocking both ends. There's air coming through somewhere, but not much. In the darkness, with only my fading flashlight, I remember the words my Apache grandfather taught me, an ancient prayer for communicating with the spirits of the land. I never thought I'd use it, always believing more in science than stories. But now, Trapped under the earth with an impossible creature hunting me, I whisper the words. To my shock, I hear a response, not in words, but in feelings and images that flood my mind. The Thunderbird is communicating with me. I see its memories of guarding this land for thousands of years, sleeping and waking whenever the balance is disturbed. I feel its anger at being awakened by human drilling and digging. I understand, I whisper in the darkness. You're protecting the land. That's my job too. A crack appears in the rock wall in front of me, widening until I can see a giant eye looking in at me. The Thunderbird and I stare at each other, and in that moment, something passes between us. An understanding, a connection. The rocks shift and move away, no longer trapping me. I stand face to face with the ancient guardian. Slowly, carefully, I reach out my hand. A tendril of electricity extends from the Thunderbird's wing, touching my outstretched fingers. Pain and energy surge through me, bringing me to my knees. But I don't pull away. This is a pact being formed. Images fill my mind, the Thunderbird showing me that it will return to its sleep beneath the earth, but not completely. Part of its awareness, its power, will stay with me. I will be its connection to the human world, its warning system. When the vision ends, I'm alone in the cave. The Thunderbird is gone. Outside, the unnatural storm has passed. But I can feel electricity running just under my skin, dancing between my fingers when I hold them up. I make my way back through the park as morning dawns. My truck starts immediately when I try it, though I'm not sure if I turned the key or just thought about it starting. In the distance, a small lightning storm follows the path of my gaze when I look too long in one direction. I understand now what has happened. The Thunderbird has returned to sleep, but it has left part of itself with me. I have a new responsibility now. I must warn others about the boundaries that need to be respected. Between worlds, between humans and nature, between what we understand and what we don't. As I drive back to the ranger station, lightning flickers around my truck responding to my thoughts and emotions. The Badlands have shared their deepest secret with me, and nothing will ever be the same. I am still William Martinez, park ranger and former professor, but now I'm something else too. I am the Thunderbird's voice in the human world, and I will make sure its warnings are heard. My name is David Mercer. I've been a park ranger at Mount Rainier National Park for 5 years now. The giant mountain watches over everything like a silent judge, always there, always waiting. That's how it feels sometimes when I'm alone on patrol. Today, I'm walking my usual route through the forest. It's early autumn and the ground is covered with red and gold leaves. They make a nice crunching sound under my boots that somehow makes me feel less alone out here. This morning started like any other. Birds were singing their morning songs as I began my hike. But now, as I climb higher up the trail, they've gone quiet. All I can hear is the soft whisper of wind moving through the tall pine trees. I don't mind the quiet. Actually, I like it. After coming back from Vietnam 5 years ago, I found peace in these woods. The city was too loud, too busy, too full of people who didn't understand what I'd been through. But here, the wilderness makes sense to me. In the distance, I hear an elk calling out. The sound echoes through the valley below. It's a normal forest sound, and it makes me feel better somehow. These familiar noises remind me that I'm home. I stop for a moment near a small stream. The water is so clear I can see every pebble at the bottom. It reflects the cloudy sky above. I kneel down to fill my canteen when something catches my eye. There are strange tracks in the mud by the water. They're huge, bigger than any bear tracks I've seen before. And the shape is wrong. The toes are long and spread out in a way that Doesn't match any animal that should be in these woods. As I stand up, I suddenly notice how cold it's gotten. My breath comes out in white clouds now. It's way too cold for this time of year. I check my thermometer. The temperature has dropped 10 degrees in just minutes. The normal pine and dirt smell of the forest changes too. There's something else in the air now, something metallic like old blood. I've smelled that before, back in the war. It's not a smell you forget. I look around, suddenly feeling like I'm being watched. The shadows between the trees seem darker than they should be. They almost look like they're moving on their own, not just when the branches sway in the wind. Something isn't right here. I've been on this mountain hundreds of times, but today feels different. I reach for my radio, thinking maybe I should check in with base when I remember why I'm out here in the first place. 3 hikers are missing. They were supposed to return yesterday, but never showed up at the trailhead where they parked their car. That's why I'm higher up the mountain than usual. I need to find them before night falls, before whatever made those strange tracks finds them first. I tighten the straps on my backpack and continue up the trail. The mountain looms above me, its peak hidden in clouds. I've always respected Mount Rainier, but today, for the first time in years, I feel afraid. I wasn't always a park ranger. Before this, I was a soldier. I wear my ranger uniform with the same pride I once felt in my army clothes. The dark green and tan colors help me blend into the forest, just like my old fatigues. Help me hide in the jungles of Vietnam. My hair is mostly dark, but these days silver streaks run through it at my temples. Those gray hairs started showing up after the nightmares began. Even now, 5 years later, I still wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I'm back in the war. I reach into my breast pocket and touch the photo I always carry with me. It's Catherine, my wife. She died in a car accident while I was overseas. Sometimes I think if I had been home instead of fighting in some faraway jungle, maybe she'd still be alive. That thought haunts me more than anything I saw in the war. People tell me I don't smile much anymore. I guess they're right. But the hikers I help find their way back to the trails, they see a different side of me. When I'm guiding someone to safety, I feel useful again, like I'm fighting for something that matters. The other rangers respect me, especially when it comes to tracking, but I know they worry about me too. They think it's strange how I always volunteer for the most lonely trails, the patrols nobody else wants. They don't understand that the silence helps me think. The wind picks up, and I feel the familiar ache along the left side of my face. My hand goes up to touch the scar that runs from my temple down to my jaw. Another souvenir from Vietnam. It always hurts when bad weather is coming. I check my watch. I'm supposed to meet up with the rest of the search party soon. I'm not the only one looking for these missing hikers, though I wish I was. I work better alone. But the park rules say we need at least 3 people for search operations. As I round the bend in the trail, I see them waiting for me. Paul Wilson is sitting on a rock checking his compass. He's new, only been a ranger for about 6 months. Young kid, eager to prove himself. Too eager sometimes. Standing next to him is Thomas Red Feather. He's not a ranger but a local hunting guide who knows these mountains better than anyone. His family has lived in this area for generations. If anyone can help us find the missing hikers, it's Thomas. "You're late, Mercer," Paul says, standing up and adjusting his hat. "I found some strange tracks back there," I tell them. "Nothing I've seen before." Thomas looks interested. "What kind of tracks?" "Too big for a bear, wrong shape too." Paul laughs nervously. Maybe Bigfoot is finally making an appearance. I don't laugh. Something about those tracks bothered me deeply. "We should get moving," I say instead. "These hikers have been missing for over 24 hours now." "What do we know about them?" Thomas asks as we start walking. 3 of them, 2 men and a woman. All experienced hikers who've been on this mountain before. They were just doing the skyline. Trail, nothing dangerous. Should have been back yesterday afternoon. Paul jogs a few steps to catch up with us. Could they have just camped an extra night? Maybe they're not even in trouble. I shake my head. One of them has a job interview today. They wouldn't stay out voluntarily. And their car is still at the trailhead, Thomas adds. We hike in silence for a while. I can't shake this feeling in my gut that something is very wrong about this disappearance. These weren't careless tourists who wandered off the trail. They knew what they were doing. They had the right gear. They were on a path they'd walked before. As we climb higher, the mist gets thicker around us. Mount Rainier is often shrouded in clouds, but today the fog seems different somehow. Thicker, almost alive. The trail splits up ahead, Thomas says. Which way do you think they went? I stop and look carefully at both paths. One continues along the ridge, the other drops down toward a small valley with a lake. Let's check for signs, I say, kneeling down to examine the dirt, and that's when I see it again. Those same strange tracks I found near the stream. Only now they're mixed in with human footprints. 3 sets of hiking boots heading down the valley trail, and following right behind them, those large, strange prints with the elongated toes. I think we need to hurry, I say, my voice steady even as my heart begins to race. They went this way, down to the valley, and I don't think they were alone. We follow the trail down into the valley, my eyes constantly searching the ground for more tracks. Paul and Thomas walk behind me, talking quietly. The mist grows thicker as we descend, wrapping around the trees like ghostly fingers. Look there, I say, pointing ahead through a clearing in the trees. I think I see something. We hurry forward, and soon a small blue tent comes into view. It's pitched near the edge of a small clearing, close to a stand of pine trees. Hello? Paul calls out. Park rangers, is anyone here? No answer. Just the soft whisper of wind through the trees. As we get closer, I feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Something isn't right. The tent is still perfectly set up. A small camping stove sits beside it with a pot half full of water. Nearby, 3 backpacks lean against a log. It looks like the hikers just stepped away for a moment and could return any second, but I know they won't. It's like they just vanished in the middle of making dinner, Paul says, looking at the scene with wide eyes. Thomas walks around the perimeter of the small camp, his eyes scanning the ground. No signs of a struggle, he notes. No blood. No torn gear. I kneel beside one of the backpacks and carefully open it. Inside are normal hiking supplies. Extra clothes, a first aid kit, granola bars, a flashlight. At the bottom, I find a small black notebook. I pull it out and flip it open. What's that? Paul asks, looking over my shoulder. Looks like a journal belonging to one of the hikers, I say, as I turn the pages. The first entries are normal. Excited. Notes about the hike, observations about plants and animals seen along the trail. But the later entries change. Listen to this, I read aloud. Day 2 on the mountain. Something feels off about this trip. Mark says I'm being paranoid, but I swear we're being watched. I keep seeing movement at the edges of my vision, but when I turn to look, nothing's there. I turn the page. Last night I woke up at 3 a.m. Couldn't say why, it was completely silent outside. No wind, no animals, just silence. And then I saw them, eyes watching from between the trees. At least I think they were eyes. They reflected the moonlight like animal eyes do, but they were too high up to be any normal animal. Thomas has gone very still. He's looking out into the forest with a concerned expression. David, he says quietly, have you noticed? The forest is silent. I pause and listen. He's right. There are no birds calling, no insects buzzing, not even the rustle of small animals moving through the underbrush. Just complete, unnatural silence. Paul pulls out his radio. I'm going to call this in, see if they can send more people to help search. He clicks the button and speaks into it. Base, this is Wilson. We've found the missing hikers' campsite, but no sign of them. Requesting additional, the radio spits out only harsh static in response. Paul frowns and tries again, adjusting the dial. More static. That's weird, he says. We should be in range. I walk to the edge of the campsite, examining the trees. Something catches my eye, about 8 feet up one of the trunks. I move closer and see 5 parallel grooves carved deep into the bark. They look like claw marks, but they're too high up and too deep to be from any bear or mountain lion. "Thomas," I call, "have you ever seen marks like these before?" He comes over and looks up at the scratches. His face darkens. "Not good," he mumbles. "What is it?" I ask. He hesitates. "My grandfather used to tell stories." Before he can finish, Paul calls out from the other side of the camp, "Guys, the compass isn't working." We join him where he stands, staring at his compass. The needle is spinning wildly, unable to find north. "Must be broken," I say, but I don't believe it. I pull out my own compass. The needle spins just as crazily. Dark clouds have gathered overhead, much faster than normal weather patterns would allow. The forest grows darker by the minute, as if evening has come early. "We need to keep looking for them," I say, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's spread out, 10 feet apart, stay within sight of each other, look for any sign of which direction they went." We begin to search the area around the campsite. I'm examining the ground for footprints when Thomas calls out, "Over here!" Paul and I rush to where Thomas stands, pointing up at a tree. About 15 feet up, caught on a branch, hangs a torn red backpack. Around the base of the tree, arranged in a perfect circle, are small animal bones. "What the hell?" Paul whispers. Thomas looks truly afraid now. "My people have stories," he says quietly, "about a hunger in the mist. Something that comes down from the mountain every few decades. Something that feeds." Paul gives a nervous laugh. "Come on, man. Don't start with ghost stories." But Thomas isn't laughing. "These are old legends, but they're based on something real. People have been disappearing on this mountain for centuries." I'm about to respond when movement catches my eye. Deep in the forest, between distant trees, stands a figure. It's tall, unnaturally still, and even from this distance, I can tell it's not human. Not fully. I blink, and it's gone. "We need to find these people fast," I say, my voice tight. "Before nightfall, if they're still alive," Thomas says softly. The words hang in the air between us, heavy with the weight of what none of us wants to admit. We might not be searching for survivors anymore. And worse, whatever took them might still be hunting. The sky has grown dark now, much too early for sunset. We should have hours of daylight left, but it feels like dusk already. The mist that's always present on the mountain has changed too. It's thicker now, swirling around us like it has a mind of its own. I could swear it almost glows a little. A faint, sick light that makes the forest look unreal. "We should head back to the ranger station," Paul says. His voice shakes slightly. "Get more people. Come back tomorrow in daylight." I shake my head. If those hikers are still alive, they won't last another night out here. "If they're still alive," Thomas repeats softly. We continue our search, moving away from the campsite. The fog makes it hard to see more than 20 feet ahead. We stay close together now, no one wanting to stray too far from the others. Suddenly, there's a sound of branches breaking to our left. Something is moving through the trees fast, too fast for a person. The sound jumps from one spot to another, like whatever is making it can move at impossible speeds. "What was that?" Paul whispers. I reach for my sidearm, a habit from my military days. All rangers carry guns for emergency situations like bear attacks, but I've never had to use mine. Until now, I've never even thought I might need to. Thomas has gone very quiet. His eyes are wide, and his hands are shaking. "I can hear him," he whispers. "Hear who?" I ask, keeping my voice low. "My grandfather." Thomas's eyes don't look right. They're unfocused, like he's listening to something far away. "He's calling me from the fog, telling me to come home." I grab his shoulder. "Thomas, your grandfather isn't here. Focus." He blinks, hard, like he's trying to clear his head. "Something is playing tricks on us," he says after a moment. "It can get inside your head." From somewhere in the mist comes a cry for help. A woman's voice. "Please, Help me! Is anyone there? Paul starts forward, but I grab his arm. Wait! The voice calls again, but this time it's different. It's a man's voice now, coming from another direction. Help! Oh God, please help! Then another voice, another direction. 3 different voices calling out all at once, from different places in the fog. It's them, Paul says. The hikers! Thomas shakes his head. It's not them. It's mimicking their voices. Mimicking? Paul looks confused. What do you mean, it? That's when I see it. Just for a second, as the fog parts slightly, a tall figure standing about 50 feet away. It has the basic shape of a human, but is too thin, too tall. Its head is wrong, like a deer skull with too many antlers, branching out in all directions. The sight of it sends a cold shock through my body, like I've been dunked in ice water. When I blink, it's gone again. Did you see that? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Thomas nods, his face pale. Paul just looks confused, scanning the fog in the wrong direction. We keep moving, trying to follow a game trail that leads deeper into the valley. The ground beneath our feet has changed. In places, there's a strange black liquid soaking into the dirt. It looks like oil, but smells metallic. When I touch a small bit with my fingertip, it burns slightly and leaves a mark on my skin. Don't touch that, Thomas warns. It's not natural. Paul's flashlight flickers on as the forest grows even darker. The beam sweeps across the ground in front of us, and what I see makes me stop in my tracks. All around us, pressed into the soft earth, are hundreds of tiny handprints. They're about the size of a child's hand, but the fingers are too long, the palms too narrow. They surround us completely, as if we're being watched by dozens of smaller versions of the thing I saw. Paul sees them too. His breathing gets faster, shallower. What the hell is happening, he whispers. The fog shifts and swirls, becoming thicker in some places, thinner in others. It's herding us, I realize, pushing us in the direction it wants us to go. It's using the mist, I say. Stay close together. But even as I say it, the fog rushes in between us. Within seconds, I can barely see Thomas, and Paul is just a shadow. Paul! Thomas! I call out, trying to move toward where I last saw them. But the fog is disorienting. I'm not sure which way is which anymore. Something moves in the mist in front of me, the thing I saw earlier. It's closer now, maybe 30 feet away. I can see it more clearly. It stands at least 8 feet tall, its body skeletal and bent. The skin stretched over its frame is grey and loose in some places, tight in others. Its arms hang down past its knees, ending in long fingers tipped with black claws. But its head is the worst part. A deer's skull, yellowed and cracked, with antlers that branch out like bare tree limbs in winter. Where eyes should be, there are only dark, empty sockets, yet somehow I know it can see me. I pull out my gun, pointing it at the creature. Stay back, I warn, though I don't know if it can understand me. The thing tilts its head like a curious dog. Then it takes a step closer. I fire a warning shot into the air. The sound of the gunshot is deafening in the quiet forest. The creature reacts instantly. It throws back its head and lets out a shriek that no living thing should be able to make. The sound is high-pitched and grating, like metal scraping on metal. It pierces my eardrums with such intensity that I feel blood trickle down from my right ear. I stumble backward, disoriented by the pain. When I look up, the creature is gone again. David! Thomas's voice cuts through the fog. David, where are you? I move toward the sound, keeping my gun ready. Thomas, I'm here! He emerges from the mist, his face streaked with dirt and fear. It separated us on purpose, he says. We need to find Paul. We call out for him, but there's no answer. I know what it is, Thomas says, his voice low and urgent. It's a Wendigo. What? A Wendigo? It's from my people's legends. A human who ate the flesh of another human during a time of starvation. The act cursed them, transformed them into a creature of endless hunger. They can never be satisfied, no matter how much they eat. I want to tell him that's just a story, a legend, but after what I've seen, I can't dismiss it so easily. If it is this Wendigo, I say, how do we fight it? Thomas looks at me with fear in his eyes. My grandfather said fire could harm them, maybe kill them, but they're clever, and they've been hunting these mountains for centuries. A scream cuts through the air, Paul's voice, terrified and in pain. We run toward the sound, pushing through the fog. The scream cuts off suddenly with a wet, tearing sound that makes my stomach turn. "Paul!" I shout. No answer. We break through the fog into a small clearing. There's no sign of Paul, but his flashlight lies on the ground, still on, the beam pointing toward a dark opening in the mountainside. A cave. Thomas picks up the flashlight, his hand shaking. "It's leading us there," he says. "It wants us to follow." I check my gun. 4 bullets left. Not much against a creature that might not even be killable by normal means. "We have to find Paul," I say, though a part of me knows it's already too late for him. Thomas nods grimly. The Wendigo is toying with us, like a cat with mice. The cave mouth gapes before us, a black hole in the side of the mountain. The beam of the flashlight barely penetrates the darkness inside. I take a deep breath. "Let's go," I say, stepping toward the cave. "But stay close. Whatever happens, we stick together." As we enter the darkness, I can't shake the feeling that we're walking exactly where the Wendigo wants us to go. Into its home, into its trap. The cave is cold and damp. Our footsteps echo off the stone walls as we move deeper inside. Thomas holds the flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness ahead of us. The beam catches something on the ground, a small puddle of something dark and wet. "Blood!" "Paul!" I call out, though I know it's useless. Something tells me we won't find him alive. The cave narrows as we move forward, then opens into a larger chamber. The smell hits us first, a rotten metallic stench that makes my eyes water. Thomas swings the flashlight around, illuminating. "The walls! Oh my God," he whispers. The walls are covered with belongings, backpacks, jackets, camping gear. Some look new, others are so old they're falling apart. And mixed in with them are more grim findings. Bones, human bones. Some are clearly years old, yellowed and dry. Others look much fresher. Thomas steps forward and picks up something from a pile of clothes. It's a ranger badge, the metal tarnished and green with age. "James Peterson," he reads from. "The badge. 1956. I take it from him, running my thumb over the name. "I've heard stories about Peterson. He disappeared during a routine patrol. They searched for weeks but never found a trace." "There's more," Thomas says, his voice hollow. He picks up another badge, then another. "William Reed, 1972. Sarah Collins, 1989. Rangers who had gone missing over the decades. All of them ended up here in this cave. We need to get out of here," I say. "Now." But as we turn to leave, a noise stops us. A low, wet sound, like something heavy being dragged across stone. It's coming from deeper in the cave. "It could be Paul," Thomas says, though his voice lacks conviction. We both know it's not Paul, but we move forward anyway, deeper into the cave system. The passage narrows again, forcing us to walk single file. Thomas goes first, with me close, behind. The dragging sound gets louder. Then we hear something else, a wet, tearing noise, followed by the crack of breaking bone. The tunnel opens into another chamber, smaller than the first. Thomas sweeps the flashlight across it, and the beam catches movement. Something crouches in the corner, hunched over a dark shape on the ground. The Wendigo turns its head toward us, antlers scraping against the low ceiling. Its mouth, a black hole in the deer skull, is dripping with fresh blood. At its feet lies what's left of Paul. I raise my gun, but before I can fire, the creature moves. It leaps upward, impossibly fast, disappearing into a crack in the ceiling. "It's above us," Thomas shouts. I look up just as the Wendigo drops down. It lands on Thomas, knocking him to the ground. The flashlight falls and rolls away, casting crazy shadows across the walls. I hear Thomas scream as the creature's claws tear into his shoulder. I fire my gun, Once, twice. The shots are deafening in the confined space. The Wendigo jerks as the bullets hit it, but it doesn't fall. Instead, it turns toward me. Those empty eye sockets somehow fixed on my face. Thomas is bleeding badly from deep gashes in his shoulder and chest. "Fire!" he gasps. "Use fire!" The Wendigo charges at me. I dive to the side, feeling its claws graze my back as it passes. I scramble to my feet, mind racing. Fire! I need fire. I reach into my pack, searching for anything that might help. My hand closes around my emergency flares. I have 3 of them, bright red tubes designed to signal for help in extreme situations. The Wendigo turns for another attack. I back up, trying to put distance between us, but there's not much room in the cave. I pull out a flare, ready to strike it. Thomas staggers to his feet behind the creature. Blood soaks the front of his shirt, but his eyes are clear and determined. "I'll distract it," he says. "Get ready." Before I can stop him, Thomas charges at the Wendigo, shouting and waving his arms. The creature turns, distracted by the movement and noise. Thomas leads it away from me, toward the back of the chamber. "Now, David!" he shouts. I strike the flare. It ignites with a bright red glow and a shower of sparks. The Wendigo spins around at the sudden light, raising a clawed hand as if to shield its empty eye sockets. Thomas grabs the creature from behind, wrapping his arms around its thin waist. "Do it!" he yells. "I've got it!" I rush forward with the flare, aiming for the Wendigo's face. The creature thrashes, trying to break free from Thomas's grip. One of its arms swings wildly, catching me across the chest. I feel a sharp pain as its claws tear through my jacket and into my skin. But I don't stop. I push the flare directly into the Wendigo's face, into the black hole of its mouth. The creature's scream is like nothing I've ever heard before. It's the sound of 1,000 souls in agony, a sound that seems to come from everywhere at once. The Wendigo bursts into flames, its dry, papery skin catching fire immediately. It thrashes more violently, breaking free from Thomas's grip. He falls back against the wall, leaving a smear of blood. The burning creature stares at me for a moment, its antlered head now wreathed in flames. Then it does something I don't expect. It changes shape. Its joints seem to pop and crack, bending in impossible ways. Its body contorts, becoming thinner, longer, more twisted. It's making itself small enough to escape through a narrow crack in the cave wall. I strike another flare and throw it at the creature. The Wendigo catches it in the shoulder, and more of its body erupts in flames. It shrieks again, the sound drilling into my head like physical pain. In its death throes, the creature lashes out one final time. Its arm extends, impossibly long, and its claws pierce my left shoulder, going all the way through. The pain is blinding. I fall to my knees, watching as the Wendigo, still burning, squeezes its twisted body through the crack in the wall and disappears into the depths of the mountain. The chamber is silent except for my heavy breathing and Thomas's weak coughs. I crawl over to him, pressing my hand against the worst of his wounds to try to stop the bleeding. "Did we kill it?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. I look at the crack where the Wendigo disappeared. Smoke and the smell of burning flesh still hangs in the air. "I don't know," I answer honestly. "I hurt it, but..." Thomas's eyes are growing dim. "My grandfather said, they can heal, unless you destroy them completely." I try to help him sit up, but he's too weak. "Save your strength. I'm going to get you out of here." He shakes his head slightly. "Too late for me." His breathing is shallow. "Now, take this." He reaches up and removes something from around his neck, a small leather pouch on a cord. "Family medicine? Protection?" I take it, slipping it over my head. "I'm not leaving you here." Thomas smiles weakly. "You have to. Warn others. Tell them about the hunger in the mist." His eyes close. I check his pulse. It's there, but fading fast. I know he's right. I can't carry him out, not with my injured shoulder, and if I stay, we'll both die here. I take Thomas's badge from his shirt pocket. I'll come back for you, I promise, though I don't know if he can hear me anymore. I'll tell them what happened, what you did. I gather what strength I have left and make my way back through the cave. My flashlight is gone, but there's enough light from the remaining flare to see my way. Every step sends waves of pain through my shoulder. Behind me, somewhere deep in the mountain, I hear a distant, muffled shriek. The Wendigo is still alive, wounded, but not destroyed. It's retreated deeper into the earth to heal, to wait, to hunger. I know two things with absolute certainty as I stumble toward the cave entrance. No one will believe what happened here today, and the Wendigo will hunt again. I don't remember much about my journey back down the mountain. The pain in my shoulder made everything blur together. The forest, the fog, the trail. By the time I stumbled into the ranger station, it was nearly dawn. My uniform was torn and caked with blood, both mine and Thomas's. They rushed me to the hospital in a helicopter. The doctors said I was lucky. The wound went clean through my shoulder without hitting any major arteries. 6 inches to the right, and I would have died on that mountain. 3 days later, I sat in Chief Ranger Wilson's office. Paul's father. His eyes were red from crying, but his face was hard as stone. "Tell me again what happened to my son," he said. I'd already told the story twice, once to the search and rescue team and once to the local sheriff. Neither believed me. They nodded and took notes, but I could see it in their eyes. They thought I was in shock, or had hit my head, or worse, we were attacked by something on the mountain, I said. Something that's been taking people for years. It got Paul. Thomas tried to save him. Neither of them made it. I didn't mention the Wendigo. I didn't talk about the creature's impossible movements or its deer skull head. I knew how it would sound. The search team found the hiker's campsite just like you described, Wilson said, and they found the cave. But there were no bodies, David, no Paul, no Thomas, just some blood and... He paused, looking uncomfortable, and some strange tracks they couldn't identify. I wasn't surprised. The Wendigo wouldn't leave evidence behind. It would drag the bodies deeper into its cave system, into places humans couldn't reach. We found these, though. Wilson pushed a small box across his desk toward me. Inside were the ranger badges I'd brought back, Thomas's and the old tarnished. One's from the cave. James Peterson, 1956. William Reed, 1972. Sarah Collins, 1989. Evidence that something had been hunting on that mountain for generations. Wilson picked up Peterson's badge. My first year as a ranger, they were still looking for him. Never found a trace. He looked at me with tired eyes. What really happened up there, David? I touched the leather pouch that still hung around my neck, Thomas's family medicine. Protection against what was still out there. Would you believe me if I told you? I asked. Wilson was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened his desk drawer and pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a young ranger standing by a trail sign. The man had Wilson's eyes and chin. My grandfather, he said. He was a ranger here in the 1930s. One night he came back from patrol talking about a creature in the mist, a monster with a deer's skull for a head. No one believed him either. I felt a chill run through me. What happened to him? He went back out the next day to prove what he'd seen. Never came back. Wilson put the photo away carefully. This mountain has secrets, David, dark ones. A week later, I was back on duty. My shoulder was still in a sling, but I insisted on working. I couldn't stay away. The mountain called to me now in a way it never had before. Today, I'm back on the trail where it all began. The autumn leaves still crunch beneath my boots. The forest has returned to normal. Birds sing, squirrels chatter, the wind whispers through the pines. Most people would think nothing had changed, but I know better. I know about the hunger that waits in the mist. I know that it's wounded but healing, growing stronger in the dark places beneath the mountain. I know that someday, maybe years from now, it will emerge again to feed. I carry Thomas's badge in my pocket now, next to Catherine's photo. 2 more ghosts to keep me company. 2 more reasons to stay vigilant. The mist rolls down from Mount Rainier's peak, wrapping around the forests below like a shroud. Most days it's just water vapor, harmless, natural. But sometimes, when the wind is still and the birds go quiet, I can feel eyes watching me from within the white haze. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm prepared. My pack holds extra flares now and a small flamethrower I bought with my own money. When the Wendigo returns, I'll be ready. Because now I understand what Thomas meant. I'm the one who knows the truth, the one who must warn others, protect them from the hunger in the mist. The mountain's dark secret is my burden now. As I walk the familiar trail, I keep my eyes on the shadows between the trees, watching, waiting. The Wendigo is patient, but so am I. And when it returns to hunt again, I'll be there. My name is Alicia Ramirez, and the Everglades have been my home for as long as I can remember. I've been a park ranger here for 12 years now. Every morning when I take my boat out on patrol, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This morning started like any other. I woke up before sunrise, put on my ranger uniform, and headed out to my patrol boat. As I pushed off from the dock, the first rays of sunlight were just starting to peek through the trees, turning the water into what looked like liquid gold. It was beautiful. I love this time of day in the swamp. The cypress trees with their hanging Spanish moss make the channels feel like a natural church. Their twisted roots reach into the water like fingers trying to grab something. As my boat slides through the water, I can see everything coming to life. A family of tall, skinny birds called herons took off flying as I passed by. They looked like black shapes against the pink-orange sky. I took a deep breath, enjoying the smell of water lilies mixed with the earthy scent that makes the Everglades special. My boat's engine made a soft humming sound. It was the only man-made noise in a place that feels like it's from the beginning of time. I noticed small ripples in the glassy water nearby, probably alligators. I'm used to them being around, but something felt different today. The morning mist was hanging around longer than usual. Normally the sun burns it away pretty quickly, but today it was sticking to the water, like it didn't want to leave. Then I noticed something strange. It got really quiet all of a sudden. The frogs and insects that usually make so much noise just stopped. It was like someone had turned off the volume in the swamp. Looking ahead, I saw the water seem darker in one spot, like something big was moving under the surface. Before I could think about what it might be, I felt a weird shake run through my boat. It wasn't from the engine. It felt like something had bumped my boat from underneath. I've spent my whole life in these swamps. My dad was a ranger here too, before poachers killed him when I was 16. That's what made me decide to protect this place. I have tattoos of Everglades animals going up both my arms, one for each year I've worked here. They remind me why I do this job. The local Seminole tribe respects me because I really care about protecting the swamp. An old tribal elder even gave me a special charm that's supposed to keep me safe from what they call the darkness beneath the water. I keep it with me all the time. My co-workers always wonder how I can find my way through the most confusing water paths without even using maps. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I have a special connection with the swamp. I just know where to go. Today I'm out here looking into reports about missing boats and animals acting weird in the deepest part of the park. I'm not alone this time. With me is Marcus Thompson, a wildlife photographer who's taking pictures of animals that have been moving around in unusual ways. He's working on a research paper about it. How much further? Marcus asked, checking his camera equipment for the third time. He wasn't used to being out on the water like this, about 20 minutes to the spot where the last boat was reported. Missing, I told him. As we moved deeper into the swamp, I noticed things that others might miss. Patches of dead plants making strange patterns across the water. Something wasn't right. Even with all my experience, I was starting to feel uneasy as we went into channels that hardly anyone visits. On the park maps, these areas are marked restricted. We don't get many visitors out this far, I said too. Marcus, even the tour guides stay away from these channels. Why's that? He asked, looking up from his camera. I shrugged. Some say it's because the channels are too narrow and dangerous. Others believe the old Seminole stories about this part of the swamp. What stories? Marcus looked interested now. Just old legends, I said. Nothing to worry about. But deep down, I was remembering what my father used to tell me about these waters, and the things that might live in the darkest, deepest parts. Things that should be left alone. The mist grew thicker around us, and I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched by something hidden in the swamp, something that didn't want us here. As we turned around a bend in the water path, something caught my eye. Marcus, I said quietly, pointing ahead. Look over there. Stuck against a bent tree root was a small airboat. Nobody was inside it. The boat looked like it had been left there not too long ago. Its engine was still warm when I touched it. Hello? I called out. Park Ranger, is anyone here? Only the sounds of the swamp answered back. Birds chirped in the distance, and somewhere a frog croaked, but no human voices. Maybe they just went for a walk, Marcus suggested, but I could tell he didn't really believe that. Who would leave their boat and wander into the swamp on foot? I pulled our boat alongside the empty one and tied them together with a rope. Inside the abandoned boat, I found a plastic water bottle that was still half full and a baseball cap with the Florida Gators logo. Someone had definitely been here recently. Then I spotted something that made my stomach feel tight. A Park Service logbook, old and worn with water stains on its cover. It had been tucked under the seat. That's weird, I said, picking it up carefully. This is an official park logbook, but it's from the 1970s. I opened it and started reading. The pages were filled with notes from rangers who had worked here long before me. Most entries were normal, wildlife sightings, weather reports, visitor counts. But then I found something that made my hands shake a little. Listen to this, I told Marcus. July 15th, 1973. Third boat reported missing this month. Search team. Found nothing. Strange tracks on the south bank. Animals avoiding the deep channel. I flipped through more pages. August 10, 1973. Ranger Wilson heard voices in the restricted area but found no one. Radio equipment malfunctioning. Water temperature dropped 15 degrees in specific spots. Marcus had wandered over to a muddy bank while I was reading. He was crouched down, his camera pointed at something in the mud. Alicia, he called, you need to see this. I closed the book and joined him. In the soft mud were weird tracks, like something with webbed feet had walked out of the water. But these weren't duck or bird tracks. They were huge, almost 4 feet across. What kind of animal makes a print like this? Marcus asked, taking photos from different angles. None that I know of, I admitted, and I know every creature in these swamps. Just then, our boat radio crackled to life. We both jumped a little. Through the static came voices, but they sounded all wrong, like someone talking backward or in a language that was almost English, but not quite. Coming, beneath, return, Waterfather. The broken words faded back into static. That's not a regular transmission, I said, turning the radio's knobs to try to get a clearer signal. No one should be broadcasting on our emergency channel. The radio went dead, no matter what I did to try to fix it. As we got back in our boat, I noticed something floating toward us in the water. It was an alligator, but it was belly up, dead. When it drifted closer, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On its pale belly were strange marks, like someone had carved symbols into its skin. I recognized those symbols from warnings carved into old trees near Seminole grounds. My father had shown them to me when I was little, telling me they marked places where the Water Father lived, a creature from their oldest stories. "We should take it with us," Marcus said, already reaching for the dead alligator. "For research." "No," I said firmly, pushing our boat away from it. "We leave it." As we continued down the channel, the water became strangely still. Usually, there are small movements everywhere. Fish jumping, insects landing, currents flowing, but now it was like glass, like something underneath was holding it in place. I checked our GPS to make sure we were still on course, but what I saw didn't make sense. According to the screen, we had been zigzagging all over the place, even though I knew for sure we'd been traveling in a straight line. "Something's wrong with the GPS," I muttered, tapping the screen. Suddenly, the air around us got very cold. So cold I could see my breath. In Florida, in summer, a patch of mist moved over us and frost actually formed on our equipment. The temperature drop was impossible. It had to be over 90 degrees today. But I was shivering. Marcus kept taking pictures of everything. The mist, the still water, the frost on our gear. When he checked his camera screen to see how the photos looked, his face went white. "Alicia," he whispered, turning the camera so I could see. In one of the pictures between distant trees was what looked like a person standing and watching us. But not quite a person. The shape was too tall, too thin, and where its face should be was just a dark blur. "It must be a smudge on your lens," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. The strangest thing was that when we both looked at those same trees with our own eyes, there was nothing there. That's when our boat engine suddenly died. I turned the key over and over, but nothing happened. We were now drifting silently in the water, and as I looked around, a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air ran up my spine. I didn't recognize this channel. That was impossible. I knew every inch of these swamps. I had maps of the Everglades in my head better than any GPS, but somehow we were in a place I had never seen before. "We need to paddle back the way we came," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I reached for the emergency paddles. But when I turned to look behind us, the channel we had come through was gone. In its place was a wall of cypress trees, so thick it looked like they'd been standing there for 100 years. We were trapped in a part of the Everglades that shouldn't exist, with something watching us from the trees, and the water around us growing darker by the minute. The silence around us was so complete that when Marcus dropped his pen, the tiny splash made us both jump. "Maybe we can call for help," he suggested, pulling out his cell phone. No signal, of course. Out here in the deep swamp, that was normal. I was about to suggest we try fixing the engine when the water around our boat started to bubble. Not small bubbles like fish making them, but big ones, the size of basketballs, rising up all around us. They popped with wet, slapping sounds, releasing a smell so awful I had to cover my nose. It was like rotten eggs mixed with dead fish. And something else I couldn't name, something ancient and wrong. "What is that?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with fear. Before I could answer, something moved under our boat. Something big. The water rose in a wave as whatever it was passed beneath us. Our boat rocked wildly, almost tipping over. I grabbed the sides to steady myself while Marcus clutched his camera to his chest. "It's probably just a manatee," I said. But I knew that wasn't true. Manatees don't make the water move like that. The bubbling stopped suddenly, and the swamp went quiet again. Too quiet. Even the distant birds had gone silent. The only sound was our breathing and the gentle lap of water against our boat. Then Marcus grabbed my arm, pointing to the water about 20 feet away. "There," he whispered. "Eyes." At first I didn't see anything. Then I noticed them, eyes watching us from just above the waterline. Not just one pair, but many, dozens of them. They were too big to be alligators, and they blinked all at the Same time, like they were connected somehow, I reached slowly for the flashlight in my belt. As soon as I turned it on and pointed it toward the eyes, they all went under at once. "Get your camera ready," I told Marcus. "Whatever it is, we should document it." He nodded, his hands shaking a little as he prepared his camera. The water about 30 feet ahead began to rise, forming a mound. Then, slowly, something emerged. I've seen every creature that lives in the Everglades. I know them all by name, by shape, by the sounds they make. But this was something I had never seen before. It was a head, reptilian like an alligator, but much, much bigger, the size of a car. It had scales that looked ancient, covered in what might have been moss or slime. But what made my heart stop was its face. It had too many eyes. Not two like a normal animal, but maybe 8 or 10, arranged in clusters on either side of its massive head. And its mouth, when it opened it, I could see rows and rows of teeth like a shark, but bigger. The creature raised itself further out of the water, showing a neck as thick as a tree trunk. Water cascaded off its body as it rose higher. Beside me, Marcus was taking pictures, the camera clicking rapidly. He was breathing hard, but he kept shooting. The thing let out a sound then, not a roar or a hiss, but a deep rumble so low I felt it more than heard it. It vibrated through the boat, through my chest, making my teeth hurt and my vision blur. I noticed birds falling from the sky around us, small ones, just dropping dead into the water. "We need to leave," I said, trying again to start the engine. It clicked, but wouldn't turn over. The creature sank back a bit, but I could see it was moving. It was circling our boat, creating a current that was slowly dragging us toward the center of the channel, toward its waiting mouth. I grabbed the paddles and thrust one toward Marcus. "Paddle!" I shouted. "Toward the trees!" We dug our paddles into the water, pushing hard. But the water itself seemed to fight back. Each time we'd make progress toward the shore, a current would push us back to the center. "It's controlling the water," Marcus said in disbelief. I remembered stories my father told me, stories he'd learned from the Seminole elders about a creature they called the Water Father. According to legend, it was an old god they used to worship hundreds of years ago, but they stopped because it demanded sacrifices. They said it could control the water, the weather, even the minds of those who looked too long into its eyes. I had always thought they were just stories to keep kids from swimming in dangerous parts of the swamp. Now I wasn't so sure. As we struggled to paddle, the channels around us seemed to shift and change. Paths that should have led to solid ground now curved back toward the center where the creature waited. It was like being in a maze that kept changing. "My camera!" Marcus suddenly shouted. His expensive camera was smoking, the lens cracking even though nothing had touched it. He dropped it with a yelp as it grew too hot to hold. It sizzled when it hit the damp floor of the boat. The creature seemed to focus on the camera as if it knew what it was, as if it didn't want to be recorded. That's when something even stranger happened. In my mind, I saw an image, clear as day, but definitely not real. It was my father standing on the shore, waving to me. "Alicia," he called, "come here. I need to show you something important." I blinked hard, and the image disappeared. Looking over at Marcus, I could tell he was seeing something too. His eyes were unfocused, and he was nodding at nothing. "The water," he mumbled. "It's solid now. We can walk across." To my horror, he started to stand up in the boat, clearly intending to step out onto the water. "Marcus, no!" I grabbed his arm. "It's not real. The creature is putting these thoughts in our heads." He blinked hard, looked at me, then down at the water. I thought I saw a path, clear as day. The creature rose higher out of the water again, its massive body making our boat look like a toy. One of its eyes, the largest one, fixed directly on me. In that moment, I felt it trying to push into my mind, trying to make me see things that weren't there. I clutched the Seminole charm that hung around my neck. The old elder had given it to me for protection against the darkness beneath the water. I had never really believed it had power, but right now I was willing to try anything. As my fingers closed around it, the charm grew warm. The creature made that low rumbling sound again, but this time it sounded almost like pain. It sank lower in the water, those many eyes still watching us, but now keeping more distance. "It doesn't like your necklace," Marcus observed, his voice steadier now. A thought occurred to me. If this was the water father from the old stories, then the Seminoles must have found ways to protect themselves from it. This charm might be more than just a superstition. The entity circled our boat again, but wider this time, as if wary of getting too close to the charm. It was still controlling the water, still keeping us trapped, but now I had something it seemed to fear. As night began to fall over the Everglades, the creature's eyes glowed with an eerie blue-green light. It continued to watch us, waiting. I knew then that this wasn't going to be as simple as waiting for rescue. No one knew exactly where we were. We were on our own against something that had been hunting in these waters for who knows how long. And, worst of all, I had the terrible feeling that it was intelligent, that it wasn't just a predator acting on instinct, but something that could think, plan, and anticipate our moves. "What's it waiting for?" Marcus whispered as darkness fell around us. "Night," I replied, my voice barely audible. "I think it's waiting for full dark." The last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the cypress trees, and the creature let out another rumble, this one almost sounding like satisfaction. In the growing darkness, more eyes appeared on the water's surface, surrounding our boat completely. There wasn't just one of these things. There were many. The night wrapped around us like a wet blanket. I could barely see the outline of Marcus sitting across from me in our small boat. The only light came from the glowing eyes that surrounded us, dozens of pairs watching from the water's surface. I had been thinking hard while darkness fell. These creatures, whatever they were, had to have weaknesses. Everything living does. I remembered how the big one had pulled back when I grabbed my charm. And there was something else. When it first surfaced and I shined my flashlight at its eyes, it seemed bothered by the light. "Marcus," I whispered, "I think they don't like bright light. When they come up to the surface, their eyes seem sensitive." "Great," he said, his voice shaky with fear. "So we just need the sun to come up in the next 5 minutes." I reached into my emergency pack and felt around until my fingers touched what I was looking for. Emergency flares. We had 6 of them. "Biko." "Ready," I told him. "When I light this, paddle as hard as you can toward that break in the trees." I pointed to a small gap I could barely make out in the darkness. I struck the flare. It burst to life with a bright red glow that lit up everything around us. The water creatures hissed, an awful sound like steam escaping from a dozen pipes. Their eyes sank below the surface, retreating from the harsh light. "Now!" I shouted. We paddled frantically, our arms aching with effort. The boat moved forward, cutting through the water that was no longer fighting against us. The creatures were momentarily blind, their control weakened. We were about halfway to the shore when the flare began to sputter. As its light dimmed, the water around us started to bubble again. The biggest creature, the one with all the eyes, surfaced right in front of our boat. It looked angry now, its massive jaws opening wide enough to swallow our boat whole. I grabbed another flare, but before I could light it, Marcus suddenly stood up in the boat. "I can see it now," he said in a strange, flat voice. "The path, it's so clear." "Marcus." "No!" I lunged for him, but I was too late. He stepped over the side of the boat and into the dark water. For a split second, he seemed to stay on top of it, like it really was solid. But then he plunged under with a splash. "Marcus!" I screamed, shining my flashlight where he'd gone under. The water boiled and churned. I caught glimpses of him struggling, his arms flailing. Then the big creature dove, creating a whirlpool that sucked everything down. After a few terrible seconds, the water went still, completely still. Marcus was gone. Tears blurred my vision, but I couldn't cry now. I had to survive to tell people what was happening here, to warn them. I lit another flare and threw it as far as I could from the boat, hoping to distract the creatures. Then I tried the engine again. This time, by some miracle, it sputtered. To life, I gunned it toward the shore, but the swamp itself seemed to be fighting me now. Tree branches that hadn't been there before hung low across the channel. Vines dropped from above, trying to tangle in the propeller. My charm was growing warmer against my skin. Looking down, I saw it was actually glowing slightly, a soft blue, light that pulsed like a heartbeat. When the creatures came too close to the boat, they veered away from that light. "Help! Alicia! Help me!" Marcus's voice came from somewhere to my left. My heart jumped. Could he still be alive? "Alicia, over here. I'm hurt but alive." The voice came from behind me now, then from the right, then from ahead. It wasn't Marcus. It couldn't be. The creature was mimicking his voice, trying to make me stop or change direction. I kept going straight, focusing on getting to shore, to safety. But the shore kept seeming to move farther away, no matter how fast I went. That's when I remembered something. An old oil pipeline that ran through this part of the park. Rangers knew about it because it sometimes leaked small amounts of fuel into the water. We were always checking it, making sure any leaks were small and cleaned up quickly. If I could find that pipeline, I steered the boat in what I hoped was the right direction, trying to remember the maps I'd studied. After a few minutes, I smelled the faint scent of oil mixing with the swamp water. The creatures were closing in again. The big one rose up behind me, a wall of scaled flesh that blocked out the night sky. The boat engine started to sputter as the water around it began to freeze. Another trick these things could do. I had 3 flares left. Striking one, I held it high and turned to face the creature. "Stay back!" I shouted, waving the flare. Its many eyes blinked, and it hesitated but didn't retreat fully. It was learning, adapting to our defenses. Soon the flares wouldn't work at all. I could smell the oil stronger now. We were right above the pipeline, and I could see the telltale rainbow sheen on the water's surface. With a deep breath, I made my decision. I lit the second to last flare and held it over the side of the boat, just above the water. "If you can understand me," I said to the creature, "then understand this. Leave me alone, or I burn everything." The creature made that low, rumbling sound again, but didn't back away. It didn't believe me, or maybe it didn't care. I dropped the flare. As it hit the water, the oil on the surface caught fire immediately. A line of flames raced across the water in both directions, following the trail of the leaking pipeline. The creature screamed, a high, piercing sound I never want to hear again. It thrashed in the water as the flames spread, driving it back, down into the depths. The fire gave me enough light to see the shore. It was closer than I'd thought. I steered toward it, pushing the engine as hard as it would go. Behind me, the creatures retreated from the flames, their eyes disappearing beneath the surface. When my boat finally scraped against solid ground, I jumped out and pulled it farther up on shore, away from the water and whatever might still be in it. My legs felt weak and I collapsed onto the muddy bank, breathing hard. The fire on the water was already starting to die down. Oil fires burn hot but quick. Soon it would be dark again, and I didn't know if the creatures would come back. Needed to find my way to the ranger station, to safety. But as I stood up and looked around, trying to get my bearings, I realized something had changed. I could feel the creatures in the water. Not just the big one and its followers that had attacked us, but others, many others, scattered throughout. The Everglades. It was like having a new sense, a way of knowing where they were without seeing them. When I touched my charm, the feeling got stronger. I could tell which channels had creatures in them and which were safe. Somehow my encounter had connected me to them. That's when I understood the truth that the Seminole elders had been trying to protect. These weren't just random monsters. They were ancient things that had always been here, sleeping in the deepest parts of the swamp. And now they were waking up, As I stumbled through the dark swamp toward help, I knew two things for certain. Marcus was gone, another victim of the Waterfather and its children, and these creatures weren't going back to sleep. I would have to warn everyone, close off the deep channels, keep people away from the water until we figured out how to fight these things. But who would believe me? A story about ancient swamp monsters waking up in the Everglades. When I finally reached the ranger station hours later, muddy and exhausted, my colleagues rushed to help me. They'd been searching for us since we missed. "Oh, check in. What happened? Where's Marcus?" they asked. "Did you find what was causing the boat disappearances?" I looked at their concerned faces and made a decision. I couldn't tell them everything. Not yet. They'd think I was crazy or in shock. "There was an accident," I said. "Something in the water took Marcus. Something dangerous." Later, I would find a way to explain. Later, I would convince them to close the deep channels and bring in experts, maybe even the Seminole elders, who might know more about fighting these creatures. But as I sat there, wrapped in a blanket, while the other rangers made calls and wrote reports, I felt the charm against my skin. It was cool now, quiet, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way. The Waterfather and its children were awake and hungry after their long sleep. And somehow, I was connected to them now. The next morning, I stood at the dock looking out over the seemingly peaceful waters of the Everglades. To anyone else, it looked normal, beautiful even, but I could feel them out there, moving beneath. The surface, watching and waiting. This wasn't over. It was just beginning, and I was the only one who knew how to sense them coming. My name is William Cooper, but everyone just calls me Bill. I've been a park ranger at Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina for 15 years now, and I know these woods like the back of my hand. Or at least, I thought I did until that day. It was a beautiful afternoon, the kind that makes you glad to work outdoors. I was driving my old Jeep along the winding forest roads, with golden sunlight filtering through the trees above me. The light made patterns on my dashboard as I steered around the curves, one hand on the wheel and the other resting on my open window. The ancient oaks and hickory trees stood like giants on both sides of the narrow road. Some of these trees have been here for hundreds of years. I often wonder what stories they could tell if they could talk. The really old ones have trunks so wide that it would take 3 or 4 people holding hands to circle them. I slowed down when I saw movement ahead. A family of deer was crossing the road, a doe and 2 fawns, with spots still on their backs. They stopped when they saw my Jeep, their ears twitching and eyes wide. The mother deer stared at me for a few seconds, then flicked her tail and led her babies into the thick bushes on the other side of the road. Just another day in paradise. I rolled down my window all the way and took a deep breath. The forest smelled amazing after yesterday's rain. Rich soil, wild mushrooms, and that clean, earthy scent that you can't find anywhere else. This is why I became a ranger. No office could ever smell this good. My radio made that familiar crackling sound. And then came Janet's voice from headquarters. "Cooper, you reading me?" "Loud and clear," I answered, picking up the handset. "Just the usual updates. Weather's holding clear through tonight. South Ridge Trail has some fallen branches, but nothing major. Oh, and tell Dr. Johnson her equipment. Delivery will be delayed until tomorrow." "Will do." "Anything else?" "Nope, that's it. Enjoy the quiet shift." If only she knew what was waiting for me. I put the radio down and kept driving, taking in the beauty around me. The forest floor was covered with patches of wildflowers and ferns. Most places still looked untouched, except for the narrow paths that animals had made over time. I've always found it peaceful how everything in nature has its place and purpose. But then I noticed something odd. A perfect circle of white mushrooms, about 30 feet across on the forest floor to my right. I'm no stranger to fairy rings, but this one was huge and so perfectly formed that it stopped me in my tracks. I pulled over to get a better look. The fungi were all exactly the same size and spaced evenly around the circle, like someone had placed them there on purpose. Nature doesn't usually work that way. That's when I realized the birds had stopped singing. You don't notice the bird sounds until they're gone, and then the silence hits you like a physical thing. I've been in these woods long enough to know that when the birds go quiet, something's wrong. As I stood there looking at the mushroom ring, a light mist started forming between the trees. That was strange, because the sky above was clear blue without a cloud in sight. The mist seemed to be rising from the ground itself, swirling around the trunks of the trees like ghostly fingers. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. I got back in my Jeep, and as I turned the key, I felt something through the steering wheel, a subtle vibration, like the earth below the road was trembling. I gripped the wheel tighter and pressed on the gas. I needed to get to Dr. Johnson's research camp. The forest was trying to tell me something, and after 15 years here, I knew better than to ignore its warnings. Little did I know that this was just the beginning. Something was wrong in my forest, and I was driving straight toward it. I guess I should tell you a bit more about myself as I drive toward Dr. Johnson's camp. Like I said, my name is William Cooper, though no one's called me William since my mom was mad at me as a kid. I'm 43 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years of my life watching over this forest. Before I became a ranger, I was a police officer in Charlotte. That job, well, it didn't end the way I hoped. There was an incident, a kid with what looked like a gun. It turned out to be a toy. No one got hurt, thank God, but I couldn't stay on the force after that. The forest called to me, offering peace and a second chance. I caught a glimpse of myself in the rearview mirror. My beard is more salt than pepper these days, and my face has gotten weathered from all these years outdoors. The sun and wind have carved lines around my eyes and mouth. My ex-wife Sarah used to call them laugh lines, but they've gotten deeper since our divorce 3 years ago. My fingers found the wooden pendant hanging around my neck, a small carving of a hawk that my daughter Lily made for me before she moved across the country with her mum. I don't get to see her much anymore, just video calls twice a week and visits during summer break. The pendant helps me feel connected to her, like she's still close by. The guys at the ranger station like to joke about what they call my forest superstitions. I won't work in certain areas during the full moon, and I leave little offerings of tobacco at old Cherokee sites. They laugh, but they also listen when I talk about the forest's history. I've spent years collecting stories about this place, including the ones about people who went in and never came out. My Jeep hit a pothole, and pain shot through my right leg. The old injury never lets me forget it's there. 3 years ago, I was helping with a search and rescue when I got caught in the crossfire of a hunting accident. The bullet shattered my knee, and now I walk with a limp that gets worse in cold weather. There's a flask of whiskey in my glove compartment that helps with the pain more often than it should. Not the best solution, but out here, you make do with what you have. I was heading to an area we call Hollow Hill, a place where the trees grow tall but somehow seem empty, like they're missing something inside. Dr. Eliza Johnson had been there for 3 weeks studying something strange. All the predators, wolves, bears, coyotes, even the mountain lions, had suddenly moved away from the hill. It's not normal for every predator to abandon an area at once. Nature doesn't work that way. In the back of my Jeep were supplies for Dr. Johnson, food, fresh water, and equipment she'd requested. But there was something else too, hidden under my seat where regulations said it shouldn't be, my old service revolver. Rangers aren't supposed to carry firearms, but lately, something about the forest has been making me uneasy. It's not anything I can put into words, just a feeling in my gut that something isn't right. That feeling has saved my life more than once. When you spend enough time in the wild, you develop a sort of sixth sense about danger. Right now, that sense was screaming at me, making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Something was very wrong near Hollow Hill. The road got rougher. As I got closer to Dr. Johnson's research camp, Fewer rangers patrolled this area, and the forest here felt different, older somehow, like it was holding its breath. The trees seemed to lean in toward the road, their branches reaching out like fingers. I checked my watch. It was almost 5 p.m. I should make it to the camp before dark, but only just, and something told me I really didn't want to be near Hollow Hill after the sun went down. Just a routine supply drop, I said out loud to myself, trying to calm my nerves. But even as I said it, I knew that nothing about this trip was going to be routine. The forest was trying to warn me, and this time the warning felt stronger than I'd ever felt before. I rounded the final bend in the road, and Dr. Johnson's research camp came into view. That's when my heart dropped into my stomach. Equipment was scattered everywhere, like something had torn through the campsite in a frenzy. And Dr. Johnson was nowhere to be seen. I jumped out of my jeep, my bad leg protesting with a sharp pain that I ignored. The camp looked like it had been hit by a tornado, but the trees around it stood perfectly still. That didn't make sense. "Dr. Johnson?" I called out, my voice sounding small in the heavy silence. "Eliza, are you here?" No answer, just the wind rustling through the leaves. I moved carefully through the wreckage of the camp. Her tent was still standing, but the rest of her equipment lay scattered across the clearing, her sample containers, camera gear, and research tools tossed around like toys. What happened here? Inside her tent, I found her research journal. Pages had been torn out and were spread across the floor like fallen leaves. I gathered them up, trying to put them in order. The last complete entry made my blood run cold. Day 18. The silence is getting worse. No bird calls for the 3rd day in a row. Last night I heard voices coming from inside the trees, whispers that almost made sense. I know how that sounds, but I swear it's true. Can't shake the feeling I'm being watched by something ancient and patient, not an animal, something else. I put the journal in my pack and kept searching. That's when I noticed all the small mirrors Dr. Johnson had brought for her equipment were broken, but they weren't just broken. The glass pieces had been arranged in perfect geometric patterns on the ground, like someone had placed each shard exactly where they wanted it. No animal could have done that. My radio crackled to life, making me jump. But instead of Janet's voice from headquarters, I heard fragments of conversations that seemed to be from long ago. Section 8, clear for the night patrol. Reports of lights on the North Ridge. Cooper, make sure you check. Those tracks again tomorrow? That last one was my own voice, but I'd never said those words. I'd never reported finding tracks that needed checking. I turned the radio off, my hands shaking a little. The sun was getting low now, casting long shadows between the trees. I needed to find Dr. Johnson before dark. I searched the area around the camp, calling her name every few minutes. That's when I found the tracks. I've been tracking animals most of my life, but I'd never seen prints like these. They had 3 toes, almost like a bird's, but much larger and deeper. The strangest thing was how they just appeared out of nowhere, as if whatever made them had materialized on the spot. The tracks went for about 20 feet, then simply stopped, in the middle of a patch of soft dirt. Like the creature had vanished into thin air. Near the edge of the clearing, I found something that made my stomach turn. A tree with dozens of dead birds, arranged in perfect circles around its base. Robins, sparrows, and bluebirds lay side by side, their wings spread out. I knelt down to look closer. There wasn't a mark on any of them, no sign of what had killed them. I pulled out my compass to get my bearings. The sun was getting lower, and I needed to know which direction would take me deeper into the forest, toward Hollow Hill, where Dr. Johnson might have gone. But when I held out the compass, the needle started spinning wildly, around and around without stopping. I checked my watch and saw the second hand moving backward. My mouth went dry. I'd heard old stories about places in the forest where time and direction didn't work right, but I'd always thought they were just tales to scare kids. Moving deeper, Into the trees, I found an old metal marker driven into the ground. It was covered with dirt and moss, like it had been there for decades, but I'd never seen it on any of our maps. I brushed away the grime and saw writing etched into the metal, words in Latin that I couldn't read, and below them, Cherokee symbols that I recognized from my studies. They translated roughly to, "The hollow place. Do not enter. It hungers." The sun was setting now, and the temperature dropped suddenly. It'd been a warm summer day, but my breath was now coming out in white clouds. Frost began to form on the leaves around me, crackling softly in the silence. It was impossible. Frost in July. But I was seeing it with my own eyes. That's when I spotted movement between the distant trees. At first, I thought it might be Dr. Johnson, but as I watched, I realized whatever was moving out there was too tall, too thin to be human. They, because there seemed to be more than one, didn't walk like people. They glided as if their feet didn't quite touch the ground. I crouched down, trying to make myself smaller, and reached under my jacket to touch the handle of my revolver. The cold metal was reassuring against my palm. I didn't pull it out yet. I still didn't know what I was dealing with. The figures moved between the trees, never coming into full view. Just glimpses of something tall and wrong. My heart was hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. Darkness was falling fast now, and I knew I needed to make a decision. Head back to my jeep and call for help, or continue toward Hollow Hill to find Dr. Johnson. Before I could decide, I heard a sound that made the decision for me, a woman's voice calling faintly from the direction of Hollow Hill. "Bill, is that you? I need help." It was Eliza Johnson's voice. I took a deep breath, pulled out my flashlight, and headed toward the voice. I had no idea what was waiting for me in the darkness, but I couldn't leave her out there alone. Not with those things moving through the trees. The forest had always been my safe place, my sanctuary. But now, as night fell completely, it felt like I was walking into the mouth of something hungry and ancient. Something that had been waiting for me for a very long time. Night fell completely as I moved toward Hollow Hill. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, jumping from tree to tree as I walked. The forest that had always been my home now felt like a strange place I'd never been before. "Eliza," I called again. "Keep talking so I can find you." "Over here," her voice answered, sounding closer now. "Follow my voice, Bill." Something about her voice didn't sound quite right, but I kept going. The trees were growing thicker, their trunks twisted in ways I'd never noticed before. My flashlight beam seemed to bend around them, like the light itself didn't want to touch. Certain spots, I reached a small clearing and stopped dead in my tracks. In the center of the clearing stood something I will never forget as long as I live. At first glance, it looked like a deer standing on its hind legs. But as my flashlight beam hit it fully, I saw it wasn't a deer at all. It had the head of a deer, yes, but its antlers twisted in ways that hurt my eyes to look at, spiraling in and out and around each other like they couldn't decide which way to grow. And it stood on legs that looked horribly human, but wrong, too long, too bent. Backward at the knees, I stood frozen, unable to move or even breathe. The thing's eyes caught the light of my flashlight and glowed red, like hot coals in the darkness. When it moved, it left a trail behind it, like seeing double, or like my eyes couldn't keep up with where it was. It would be in one spot, and then another, with faint images of itself stretching between the two places. "Hello, Ranger Cooper," it said, but not with a mouth. The voice seemed to come from everywhere around me, from the trees themselves. "We've been waiting for you." I tried to back away, but my legs wouldn't work. "What are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "I am this place," it answered. "I have always been this place." The creature moved closer, and I noticed something impossible. It seemed to be both far away at the edge of the clearing and right behind me at the same time. I could feel its breath on my neck, yet I could see it 20 feet away. Then came the knocking sounds, sharp, rhythmic taps from inside the trees around me. At first, they seemed random, but then I realized with growing horror that they were Morse code. My dad had taught me Morse code when I was a kid, and I still remembered enough to understand what the trees were tapping out. H-U-N-G-R-Y. My training kicked in, and I reached for my gun, pulling it from its holster with shaking hands. I pointed it at the creature, but it only tilted its head curiously. That's when something stepped out from behind a tree to my right. It was me, another Bill Cooper, wearing the same clothes, with the same flashlight in his left hand. But this, or the me moved in a way that felt wrong, doing things just before I thought to do them myself. When I raised my right hand, he had already raised his. When I stepped back in shock, he was already stepping back. "What is this?" I shouted, swinging, my flashlight between the dear creature and my double. "Time is fluid here," the creature said. "What will happen has already happened. What has happened will happen again." "Where's Dr. Johnson?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "What have you done with her?" As if in answer, someone else stepped into the clearing. It was Eliza Johnson, but changed. Her movements were jerky and unnatural, like a puppet on strings. When she looked at me, her eyes reflected my flashlight beam like an animal's eyes would. "I've found it, Bill," she said, her voice dreamy and distant. "The thing we've all been looking for without knowing it. The hollow ones have always been here watching us, waiting for us to notice them." "Eliza," I said carefully, keeping my gun pointed at the dear creature, "we need to get out of here. Whatever this thing is, it's done something to your mind." She smiled, but it wasn't her smile. "You don't understand yet, but you will. Everyone who enters the hollow places either joins them or becomes food for them." The creature seemed to grow more solid as my fear increased. I could see it feeding on my confusion and terror, drinking it in like water. It stretched out one long, thin arm toward me, its fingers too many and too long. "The forest has always been mine," it said. "The Cherokee knew, the settlers knew. They left me offerings. They stayed away from my hollow places. But you humans forget so quickly. The trees around us began to move, not swaying in the wind. There was no wind. The roots pushed up through the soil, reaching for my ankles like grasping hands. Branches bent down, trying to grab my arms. The creature showed me things then, visions that flashed in my mind like old photographs. I saw other people in these woods across time, Cherokee hunters, European settlers, hikers, rangers like me, all encountering this thing, all either running or joining it. "You've been hunting in these woods for centuries," I said, the realization hitting me hard. "Longer," it replied. "Since before there were words for time." I noticed something strange about the creature. When I looked directly at it, it seemed more solid, more real. But when I glimpsed it from the corner of my eye, it seemed partly transparent, like it wasn't fully in our world. That's when I understood. This thing existed partly in another place, another dimension maybe. It could only fully enter our world. When someone looked at it, believed in it, Dr. Johnson took a step toward me, her movement still wrong. Her fingers were changing, growing longer and thinner, turning brown like twigs. "Join us, Bill," she said. "The hollow ones are lonely. They've been waiting so long for someone to see them, to know them." The creature moved closer, and I could feel its hunger now, not for my body, but for my fear, my confusion, my life's energy. It wanted to hollow me out and fill me with itself, just like it had done to Eliza. I had to get away, had to think. The old fire tower was about half a mile away. Maybe from that height I could escape whatever influence this thing had on the forest floor. I clutched my wooden pendant in one hand, my gun in the other, and prepared to run for my life. I turned and ran. My bad leg screamed with pain, but fear pushed me forward. I knew the old fire tower was somewhere to the east, standing tall above the trees. If I could just reach it, maybe I could get above whatever power this thing had over the forest floor. "You can't run from what's already everywhere," the creature's voice whispered from the trees all around me. I kept going, fighting my way through underbrush that seemed to grab at my clothes and feet. The beam of my flashlight jumped wildly ahead of me, showing glimpses of the path, and then darkness again. Behind me, I heard Eliza Johnson crashing through the woods. "Bill, stop! Don't you understand? It's better to join them." I didn't look. "You back?" I couldn't. Looking at that thing made it stronger, more real, so I fixed my eyes ahead and ran like I hadn't run since before my accident. The world around me began to change in frightening ways. 1 minute, I seemed to be running through molasses, each step taking forever, the forest stretching out endlessly ahead of me. The next minute, everything sped up, trees blurring past me so fast I nearly crashed into them. The creature was playing with time, trying to confuse me, to make me lose my way. "Focus, Cooper," I told myself out loud. 1 foot in front of the other, east to the tower. Through the trees ahead, I caught a glimpse of it, the old fire tower, its metal frame silhouetted against the night sky. Just a 1/4 mile now, I could make it. Something grabbed my ankle and I went down hard, face first into the dirt. I rolled over to see Eliza standing over me, but she was changing faster now. Her arms had grown too long, her fingers like wooden. Twigs scratching at the air. "It's too late for you to leave," she said, her voice now a strange mix of hers and something else's. "The hollow ones have marked you." I raised my gun, pointing it at her. "Stay back, Eliza. I don't want to hurt you." "You can't," she said, smiling with too many teeth. "Guns don't work here." I fired anyway. The shot echoed through the forest, but Eliza didn't even flinch. The bullet had passed right through her as if she was made of fog. Behind her, the deer. Creature emerged from between the trees, its twisted antlers scraping against the branches. I scrambled backward, still on the ground, desperate to get away. My hand touched the wooden pendant hanging from my neck, my daughter's gift. As my fingers wrapped around it, the creature hissed and drew back slightly. I noticed how its form seemed to waver, becoming less solid. Could it be that simple? Not silver bullets or holy water, but something made with love. I held the pendant out toward the creature. "Stay back!" The creature's form rippled like water, and it took a step away from me. Eliza's face twisted in anger. "You can't stop what's already started," she snarled. I got to my feet and backed away, keeping the pendant pointed at them. It wasn't much, but it gave me time to think, to form a desperate plan. "My Jeep," I muttered to myself. "If I can get back to my Jeep." I remembered something then. Dr. Johnson's broken mirrors at the camp, the way the creature seemed to become more real when I looked directly at it. Mirrors reflect. They show things as they are, or as they aren't. I turned and ran again, changing direction toward the research camp instead of the tower. I needed those mirror shards. The forest worked against me every step of the way. Roots rose up to trip me. Branches whipped at my face. The paths I'd known for years suddenly ended in places they shouldn't, forcing me to double back. Behind me, I could hear Eliza and the creature following, crashing through the underbrush. But the pendant seemed to slow them down, as if they couldn't come too close to it. Finally, I burst into the clearing where Dr. Johnson's camp stood. I rushed to where I'd seen the mirror shards arranged on the ground and grabbed a handful of the largest pieces, stuffing them into my jacket pockets. The edges cut my fingers, but I barely noticed the pain. I turned to leave, and there was Eliza, standing at the edge of the clearing. But she looked different now, more tree than human, her skin turning to bark, branches sprouting from her shoulders. "I'm giving the last of myself to hold it back," she said, and for a moment her voice sounded like the real Eliza again. "It wants you, Bill. It wants your knowledge of the forest, your connection to these woods." "Eliza," I said, taking a step toward her. "We can still get out of here." She shook her head, bark cracking around her eyes. "It's too late for me." I looked into its true form. I let it in. "But you can still escape if you run now." "I can't leave you," I said, even as I saw her body twisting, changing more with each second. "I'm already gone," she said. "Run!" With a horrible cracking sound, her body split open, and the dear creature stepped out from inside her like she'd been nothing but a shell. Eliza was gone, absorbed completely by the entity. I ran back through the forest toward my jeep, mirror shards cutting into my hands through my pockets. The creature followed, closer now without Eliza to hold it back. I could hear it moving through the trees, sometimes to my left, sometimes to my right, sometimes impossibly ahead of me. When I finally saw my jeep through the trees, I nearly cried with relief. I sprinted the last 100 yards, pulled open the door and jumped inside. My hands fumbled with the keys, finally getting them into the ignition. I turned the key. Nothing happened. The engine was dead. No, no, no! I pounded the steering wheel, outside. The jeep. The forest had gone completely silent. No insects chirping, no leaves rustling, just the sound of my own panicked breathing. The creature appeared in front of the jeep, its antlers now so twisted they formed a kind of crown above its head. It placed one long-fingered hand on the hood. "Nowhere left to run, Ranger Cooper," it said. "Your machine is hollow now, just like everything else will be." I had one chance left. I pulled out the mirror shards from my pockets, my hands bloody from the cuts. I held them up, angling them to catch the creature's reflection in the beam of my flashlight. The effect was immediate and terrible. The creature shrieked, a sound like trees being torn apart in a storm. In the mirrors, I could see its true form. Not the deer thing it showed the world, but something else. A void shaped like a deer. A hole in reality with stars visible inside its body. It was emptiness, given form. A piece of nothingness that had always existed in the forest. The mirrors cracked in my hands from the sound of its scream. But now I knew what to do. I reached into the back of my jeep where I kept my emergency gear and pulled out a road flare. "Fire!" I said, striking the flare to life. Its red glow filled the jeep. "You're afraid of fire, aren't you? Fire fills. Empty spaces, fire pushes back the dark." The creature backed away from the jeep as I stepped out, flare in one hand, my daughter's pendant in the other. I knew I couldn't kill this thing. It had existed in these woods for centuries, maybe longer, but I could drive it back, force it to retreat to whatever hollow dimension it came from. I touched the flare to the dry underbrush at my feet. The forest was dangerous in summer, prone to fires. Rangers like me spent our lives preventing forest fires. But now, a controlled burn was my only weapon. The brush caught quickly, flames spreading in a circle around my jeep. The creature retreated, further, its form wavering like a bad TV signal. "This forest has never been yours," I told it, my voice stronger now. "It belongs to life, not emptiness. To light, not dark." The fire spread, creating a barrier between me and the creature. Through the flames, I saw it begin to fade, to lose its hold on our world. Its voice came one last time, distant now. "I will wait, Ranger Cooper. In the hollow places between trees, in the empty spaces between heartbeats, I will always be here." Then it was gone, faded back to whatever dimension it had come from. But I knew it wasn't gone completely. The fire had only driven it back temporarily. Worked quickly to control the flames, using dirt and the emergency water from my jeep to create a fire break. I couldn't let the whole forest burn, even to escape this thing. As dawn broke over the trees, the fire was contained. I sat on the hood of my jeep, exhausted, watching the sun rise. My leg throbbed, my hands were cut and burned, but I was alive. I knew I should radio for help, tell them about Dr. Johnson, about what happened here. But who would believe me? What would I even say? As I touched the wooden pendant around my neck, I felt something inside me, a small hollow space that hadn't been there before, a tiny piece of awareness that wasn't entirely mine. The creature had marked me somehow, left a part of itself inside me. I started my jeep, the engine turning over easily now. As I drove away from Hollow Hill, I knew two things for certain. The entity was still there, waiting in the spaces between trees, and I would have to come back one day to face it again. For now, though, I needed to recover, to think, to plan, because the hollow forest had been here long before me, and it would be here long after I was gone. But as long as I was ranger in these woods, I would make sure no one else wandered unknowingly into the entity's hunger. The forest was quiet as I drove back toward ranger headquarters, too quiet. But this time I understood the silence. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the sound of something listening,